everyone. Today, I aim to guide you through a gripping story, perfect for relaxing or drifting off to sleep. As you listen, try to settle comfortably and let your mind unwind. On the night of March 18th, 2018, at 11:43 p.m., an emergency call came into the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Florida. The officer who answered felt an immediate chill, a strange sensation that sent a shiver down their spine. Before they could understand what was being said, the line suddenly went dead. The lack of information was unsettling, but an instinctive sense warned that something terrible was unfolding nearby. 6 minutes later, at 11:49 p.m., the phone rang again. This time, a calm, almost unnaturally composed voice reported an emergency at 13248 Peak Lake Road. Without hesitation, police dispatched a team to investigate. When they arrived, they sensed that something was terribly wrong. Flames roared from inside the house, spreading rapidly and engulfing everything in their path. Firefighters arrived swiftly, rushing to contain the blaze, but their efforts were interrupted by a horrifying sight. Standing outside the burning house was a black man, blood covering his body. Nearby, a woman lay motionless, her body riddled with wounds. The police ordered him to raise his hands and lie down, but he staggered forward, eyes vacant, muttering incoherent words. Unable to control the situation, they used a taser to subdue him. As he collapsed, he kept repeating, "Allah is the greatest," a phrase deeply rooted in Islam. What followed was even more disturbing. The man declared, "KK is the devil. The kids are the devil's children too." It was unclear whether he was mentally ill or under some influence, but his condition was alarming. The strong smell of gasoline emanated from him, and his hands were still blood-stained. The police turned their attention to the woman, who was covered in wounds and soaked in blood. Her breathing had ceased long ago. Suddenly, a young boy staggered out of the burning house, clutching his stomach with both hands. Blood seeped through his fingers, staining his clothes. With a trembling voice, he whispered, "My dad shot my mom." As he finished speaking, his eyes rolled back and he collapsed onto the cold ground. The officers quickly rushed him to the hospital, where he was found to be in critical condition. Meanwhile, firefighter Donald received a report that another child was still trapped inside the burning building, adding to the mounting horror of the scene. Without hesitation, Donald charged into the blazing inferno, the intense heat threatening to overwhelm him as flames consumed everything in their destructive path. The air was thick with the acrid smell of gasoline, a clear indication that someone had deliberately ignited the fire to destroy evidence. Moving swiftly through each room, Donald strained his eyes to see through the smoke and wreckage until he finally spotted a small figure lying motionless on the bedroom floor. Rushing to her side, he gently scooped up the tiny girl into his arms. The moment his fingers touched her icy skin, a crushing pain seized his chest, and he realized it was already too late. Tears welled up in Donald's eyes as he stood there, overwhelmed by grief. Despite years of responding to countless fires and witnessing many lives lost, nothing had prepared him for the heartbreak of this moment. Emerging from the smoldering ruins, he clung to his teammate, unable to suppress his sobs. Once the flames were extinguished, forensic investigators began their meticulous examination of the scene. Their findings sent shivers down their spines. Outside the house, they discovered a broken shotgun, while inside a blood-stained axe and a knife caked with crimson lay nearby. An empty gasoline canister was discarded on the floor, revealing a ruthless plan of destruction. The most horrifying sight, however, was the blood splattered across the walls, floor, and furniture. What had once been a family home now resembled a nightmarish tableau of violence. All evidence was promptly collected and sent to the lab for analysis. Forensic experts quickly identified the victims. Lying motionless on the lawn was Kenyatta Barron, aged 33, affectionately known as Kiki by her friends. Inside the house, they found her 9-year-old daughter, Renavia O'Neill. As the medical examiners examined the bodies, even seasoned professionals who had handled hundreds of murder cases couldn't help but shudder. Kenyatta's body was battered beyond recognition. She had been shot twice, once in her right shoulder, once in her elbow, yet those wounds weren't the cause of her death. Her head was covered in bruises and scratches, with her skull fractured in multiple places and several teeth broken. The cause of death was severe trauma from countless wounds inflicted during her final moments. What Kenyatta endured was already horrifying, but what happened to Renavia was even more agonizing. The young girl had been repeatedly struck on the head with an axe, a brutal act of violence no one could imagine. From the firefighter who found her to the forensic team that examined her injuries, tears flowed freely. This was not merely a murder, it was a savage, inhumane act of torture that shook the entire Florida community to its core. Despite the tragedy and the bloodstains on the house, a faint glimmer of hope persisted. Ronnie O'Neill, Kenyatta's 8-year-old son who had escaped the burning house, was still alive. His small frame was marred by numerous cuts across his arms, face, and chest, with deep wounds gouging his stomach. More than a quarter of his skin had suffered severe burns, and he had lost so much blood that his life hung precariously in the balance. Initially, doctors believed his chances of survival were nearly non-existent. How could a child with such devastating injuries possibly endure? Yet against all odds, a miracle unfolded. After several urgent surgeries, driven by an extraordinary will to live, the boy defied death in an astonishing manner. In October of 2017, while wandering the streets, Ronnie unexpectedly became the target of an unidentified gunman. He was shot in broad daylight, blood pooling around him as he lay wounded. Despite the severity of his injuries, fate was not ready to see him perish. He was swiftly taken to the hospital, where he survived the ordeal. However, upon leaving the hospital, he found himself abandoned. His family turned away, and his new girlfriend refused to associate with him anymore. With no one else to turn to, Ronnie reached out to Kenyatta, the woman he had once cast aside. Kenyatta, a compassionate woman, knew Ronnie was irresponsible and no longer harbored feelings for him. Nonetheless, she couldn't ignore her maternal instincts, especially since he was the father of her children. She chose to help him, opening her home and caring for him during his time of need. But she could never have foreseen that her act of kindness would ignite a chain of horrors. What began as a gesture of goodwill culminated in a brutal massacre that claimed her life and that of her children. Even as investigators examined the crime scene, they struggled to understand Ronnie's true motive. How could he commit such cruelty against his own children? Kenyatta had once saved him when he had no one else, yet he repaid her with murder. This question remains an enduring mystery, unresolved even years later. During the investigation, police interviewed a key witness, James Gray, who was engaged to one of Kenyatta's neighbors. According to James, on the night of the attack, he was resting at home when he overheard a heated argument coming from the neighboring house. The voices were so loud they pierced through the walls, impossible to ignore. Driven by curiosity, he stepped outside and saw two shadowy figures standing silently outside Kenyatta's house. A wave of unease swept over him. Approaching cautiously, he was horrified to find Kenyatta lying motionless on her doorstep, with Ronnie standing nearby like a ghostly figure. In the dim light, James saw Ronnie dragging Kenyatta's arm while clutching a long object in his other hand. At first, he couldn't identify it, but later believed it might have been a shotgun. Concerned, James called out, asking what had happened. Instead of responding, Ronnie suddenly shouted, "You wouldn't understand. She wanted to kill me." Then, like a man possessed, he yelled one final phrase before turning and walking back inside. James, overwhelmed by fear, dared not intervene recklessly. He stood silently at a distance, observing the scene until the police arrived, after which he left. Later, officers interviewed several witnesses whose accounts corroborated James's statement. Neighbors described Kenyatta's home as consistently peaceful and harmonious until Ronnie moved in, bringing chaos in its wake. Arguments escalated into frequent shouting matches and the sound of objects smashing, creating an atmosphere of imminent violence that many feared would erupt at any moment. On that tragic day, those fears materialized. The police uncovered a scene far more disturbing than initial witness reports. They found a blood-stained axe, with forensic tests revealing that most traces on it belonged to Ron Na. The wounds on her body matched the axe's blade perfectly, confirming it as the primary weapon that ended her life. Nearby, they discovered a heavily damaged shotgun, showing signs of deliberate destruction. The bullet wounds on Kenyatta's body aligned with this weapon, suggesting Ronnie may have intentionally sabotaged it to destroy evidence. Among the wreckage, forensic experts also identified a blood-stained knife, with DNA analysis confirming it belonged to little Ronnie. This was likely the weapon that inflicted injuries, nearly costing him his life. Additionally, a large quantity of gasoline had been poured throughout the house, indicating Ronnie's attempt to set the scene ablaze and obliterate evidence. Most significantly, all the weapons bore Ronnie's fingerprints, sealing his connection to the crime. Although no witnesses directly saw the attack, the accumulated evidence was overwhelming, giving police ample grounds to press charges. During detention, Ronnie displayed a defiant attitude, denying all accusations with no sign of remorse or fear. At times, he even appeared provocative, as if convinced of his innocence. However, he suddenly shifted his stance, agreeing to cooperate during an interrogation. He then presented a different version of events, claiming that his argument with Kenyatta had been trivial. He alleged that in a moment of rage, Kenyatta lost control and attacked him first, falsely accusing her of repeatedly abusing their children in a brutal manner. With a tone of false innocence, Ronnie claimed, "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just used too much force and accidentally caused her death. I had no choice but to defend myself." He shamelessly shifted blame for the children's welfare onto Kenyatta, asserting that everything was her fault. "I didn't do anything," he insisted. "I was just a father trying to protect my kids. My actions were no different from any other father's instinctive response." He even tried to justify his actions by referencing his Divyatsa Odinatsat call, claiming, "In the second call I said Kiki wanted to kill me." This evidence clearly establishes that I was the victim, not the attacker. However, law enforcement was quick to see through Ronnie's claims. They recognized that the evidence heavily favored the prosecution, and that his statements were riddled with inconsistencies. If Kenyatta had been the aggressor, why was she the one shot? If Ronnie was merely defending himself, why did he pour gasoline throughout the house in an attempt to destroy evidence? If Kenyatta had harmed the children, why were Ronnie's fingerprints found on all the weapons? It was obvious that his account was fabricated. When he was arrested, Ronnie showed no signs of injury, no bruises or scratches indicating he had been assaulted by Kenyatta, as he claimed. Instead, the marks on his body belonged to Kenyatta and the children. Furthermore, the character of Kenyatta sharply contrasted with Ronnie's accusations. Those who knew her described her as a gentle mother who loved her children deeply and showed no signs of violence. There was no motive for her to attack her ex-partner or harm her own children. Yet Ronnie persisted in his victim narrative, weaving a contradictory story to conceal his guilt. He had not anticipated that his own son, forced to witness the horrific scene, would become the most compelling witness against him. Despite Ronnie's attempts at justification, his son's testimony revealed a stark and brutal account of that night. The police listened quietly as the boy recounted the events, each word cutting through the silence like a knife and sending chills down everyone's spine. "That night, I was asleep when I woke to the sound of my parents arguing fiercely about religion. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash. Frightened, I opened my door to see what was happening. I saw my dad holding a shotgun, pointing it directly at my mom. When she saw me, she yelled for me to go back to my room and ran into Reniovia's room to hide. But Dad didn't stop. He chased her. Terrified, my mom hid in the closet. Then Dad turned to me, forcing me to stand outside the room in the hallway and shout, 'Allah is the greatest.' Scared out of my mind, I did as he commanded. While I was trembling, a gunshot suddenly rang out from inside the room. Mom staggered out, bleeding heavily. Yet Dad continued his assault. He grabbed my hand, pressed it against the gun, and forced me to pull the trigger on her. Paralyzed by fear, I couldn't resist. Mom was badly wounded, but still tried to escape outside. I thought Dad would let her go, but he chased her to the door with the gun. Another shot rang out. Later, Dad returned, but this time he was holding an axe. He entered Renavia's room, dragged her into the hallway, and ignored her screams and pleas. He swung the axe repeatedly at her. During his detention, Ronnie maintained a defiant attitude, denying all charges with no sign of remorse. At times, he even appeared provocative, acting as if he were innocent. But eventually, his story took a different turn. One day, Ronnie unexpectedly agreed to cooperate, offering a radically different account during interrogation, believing it would clear him. He claimed that on that day his argument with Kenyatta was trivial, and in a moment of heated dispute she lost control, becoming aggressive and attacking him first. He also falsely accused her of repeatedly abusing their children in a brutal manner. With a tone full of false remorse, he insisted, "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just used too much force and accidentally caused her death. I had no choice but to defend myself." Regarding their 2 children, Ronnie shamelessly shifted all blame onto Kenyatta, fabricating stories to absolve himself. He insisted it was entirely her fault, asserting he was simply a father acting on instinct to protect his kids, claiming his actions were no different from any other parents. He even tried to use his Diviatsat Odinatsat calls as evidence, stating, "In the second call, I said Kiki wanted to kill me. That proves I was the victim, not the aggressor." However, law enforcement quickly saw through his deception. The evidence was stacked against Ronnie, and his statements contained numerous contradictions. If Kenyatta was the aggressor, why was she the one shot? If he was merely defending himself, why did he pour gasoline throughout the house to destroy evidence? If Kenyatta had harmed the children, why were Ronnie's fingerprints found on all the weapons? Clearly his story was a lie. When arrested, Ronnie showed no signs of injury, no bruises or scratches that would suggest he had been attacked by Kenyatta. Instead, all traces on his body belonged to Kenyatta and the children. Moreover, Kenyatta's character sharply contradicted Ronnie's accusations. Those who knew her described her as a gentle mother who loved her children dearly and showed no signs of violence. There was no reason for her to attack her ex-partner or harm her own children. Yet Ronnie stubbornly clung to his victim narrative, fabricating a contradictory story to conceal his crimes. He could not have foreseen that his own son, who was forced to witness a horrifying scene, would become the most crucial witness against him. Despite Ronnie's efforts to justify himself, his son's testimony painted a stark, brutal picture of that night. The police listened in silence as the boy recounted his account, each word piercing the air like a knife, sending chills through everyone present. That night, the boy explained, he was sleeping when he awoke to the sound of his parents arguing fiercely about religion. Suddenly he heard a loud crash. Frightened, he opened his door and saw his father holding a shotgun, pointing it directly at his mother. When she saw him, she yelled for him to go back to his room and then ran into Renavia's room to hide. But Ronnie did not stop. He chased her, and she, terrified, hid in the closet. The father then ordered me to stand in the hallway outside the room and compelled me to shout, "Allah is the greatest." Fear overwhelmed me, but I obeyed. Suddenly a gunshot shattered the silence from inside. My mother staggered out, blood pouring from her wounds. Yet my father showed no mercy. He seized my hand, pressed it against the gun, and forced me to pull the trigger on her. Paralyzed by terror, I couldn't resist. Despite her severe injuries, Mom tried to run outside, but Dad chased her with the weapon. Another gunshot echoed through the house. Later, Dad returned, this time wielding an axe instead of a gun. He stormed into Renavia's room, dragging her out as she screamed and begged for mercy, but he paid no attention. He swung the axe repeatedly at her, each blow crushing her small frame. Little Ronnie choked on his words, tears streaming down his face as he trembled, unable to continue. Yet even this limited account was enough for the police to reconstruct the crime. His testimony confirmed every detail, from the placement of wounds to the discarded weapons, establishing Ronnie as the perpetrator. After the atrocity, Ronnie's brutality escalated further. He set the house ablaze, using tissues and clothing as kindling before dousing everything with gasoline. But his cruelty did not end there. As the flames grew, he attacked his own son. Before Ronnie could react, he was struck forcefully in the stomach. In agony and panic, the boy tried to escape to the kitchen, seeking safety, but Ronnie was relentless. He grabbed a knife and plunged it into his son's stomach. By then, the fire had engulfed the boy, and the searing pain from burns and the stab wound blurred his vision. The world spun around him before he lost consciousness. When the police arrived, they found a battered, bloody child struggling to crawl out of the burning house. In excruciating pain, the boy managed to look at the officers and whisper, "My dad shot my mom." Then he collapsed, unconscious. Emergency responders quickly rushed him to the hospital. When Ronnie's son regained consciousness, the police were there to hear his story, which left them speechless. An 8-year-old had been forced to witness his father kill his mother, hunt down his sister, and then turn on him. Even more horrifying, Ronnie had coerced his son into complicity, making him hold the gun and repeat the phrases he demanded. The boy's testimony also exposed Ronnie's lies. Earlier, Ronnie had deliberately made 2 calls to emergency services. In the first, the officers could hear Kenyatta's desperate pleas. By the second call, silence had fallen, indicating she had already been murdered. Throughout the calls, Ronnie repeatedly claimed, "Kiki wanted to kill me," further revealing his deception. At this stage, authorities recognized that Ronnie's cries for help were merely a calculated ruse. He had crafted a story to cast himself as the victim, revealing a pattern that persisted throughout the case. From the initial Deviatso Odinatsat calls to Ronnie's arrest and even his son's testimony, a recurring phrase echoed, "Allah is the greatest." The police questioned why Ronnie compelled his young son to shout this phrase amid the brutal slaughter of their family. They speculated that the murders might have been driven by a religious conflict. Perhaps Ronnie had pressured Kenyatta to convert to Islam, and her firm refusal ignited a deadly confrontation. With mounting evidence, prosecutors swiftly charged Ronnie with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 of attempted murder, arson, and resisting law enforcement. The case appeared straightforward, bolstered by irrefutable proof and the critical testimony of little Ronnie. The trial seemed poised to proceed smoothly, yet unexpected complications arose. Ronnie suddenly claimed he was mentally ill and unfit to stand trial. At first glance, this appeared to be a tactic to avoid justice. However, examining his background raised doubts about the sincerity of his defense. Ronnie had endured childhood abuse and survived a separate shooting incident. A psychologist named Dr. Milan evaluated him and diagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This diagnosis could potentially change the entire course of the case, as individuals with PTSD sometimes react violently when feeling threatened, even if the threat is imaginary. If Ronnie's actions were driven by a mental health crisis triggered by past trauma, the law might consider a reduced sentence. Was Ronnie genuinely haunted by psychological scars, or was this a facade to evade responsibility? After a detailed investigation, the court dismissed Dr. Milan's conclusions, deeming her assessment unreliable. She had never directly interviewed Ronnie, relying solely on one-sided accounts from his family members. Consequently, her evaluation was rejected as inadmissible evidence. Moreover, there was no proof linking PTSD to the crimes he committed. Instead, his actions demonstrated clear premeditation. After killing Kenyatta, he deliberately called Deviatsot Odinatsat, fabricated a victim story, targeted his son, the only witness, and set the house on fire to destroy evidence. If Ronnie had truly been mentally incapacitated, could he have planned such a cold, meticulous crime? Ultimately, additional psychological evaluations confirmed Ronnie's competence to stand trial. Despite this, he showed no remorse or fear. Instead, he displayed blatant arrogance by refusing legal representation and insisting on defending himself. Despite repeated warnings from the judge about the risks of his decision, Ronnie remained unconcerned, confident that his rhetorical skills could sway the outcome in his favor. Like many audacious criminals, he believed his sharp words might turn the tide, but experience often shows such arrogance only deepens a defendant's downfall. His choice to proceed led to a cruel irony. He was now forced to face his own son, the child he had once tried to kill. The trial officially commenced on June 16, 2021, revealing from the outset Ronnie's unstable and chaotic demeanor. His statements were disorganized and illogical, as he continuously denied all charges, insisting on his innocence while loudly accusing prosecutors of framing him. He claimed his son was traumatized after witnessing the crime scene, making his testimony unreliable, and accused forensic experts of tampering with evidence to incriminate him. At one point, he boldly alleged that police had staged the entire Deviatso Odinatsat call to manipulate the case. His bizarre assertion stunned the courtroom into silence, but Ronnie persisted, loudly asserting that the evidence would expose a corrupt government. The trial's most pivotal moment arrived during Ronnie's cross-examination of his son. Throughout the questioning, Ronnie sought to undermine his son's credibility, insisting the boy had not seen him commit the crime. Yet, as their dialogue unfolded, the truth emerged painfully clear. When Ronnie asked if he had harmed his son, the boy responded that his father had stabbed him in the stomach with a knife, silencing everyone present. Although the boy did not witness his father shoot his mother directly, he had seen Ronnie chase her with a shotgun, and only the two of them were in the house at the time. With no way to deny the facts, Ronnie was compelled to admit his guilt. In his closing remarks, he maintained his cold arrogance even as he faced sentencing, making it clear he felt no remorse. His defiance persisted until the very end. The jury quickly returned a guilty verdict on all counts. On July 23, 2021, the court sentenced him to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 90 years behind bars, ensuring he would never walk free again. During sentencing, Judge Michelle Cisco delivered a powerful condemnation, stating that in her 19 years on the bench, she had presided over many cases, but none as heinous as this. She condemned Ronnie's actions as utterly cruel and unforgivable, leaving no doubt about the gravity of his crimes. Following his sentencing, Ronnie appealed to the Florida Court of Appeals, but the verdict remained unchanged and his life sentence was confirmed. He would spend his remaining days behind bars paying for the heinous crimes he had committed. Amidst this tragic outcome, a young survivor emerged, little Ronnie. At the time of the attack, he was only 8 years old. Not only did he witness his father assault his mother, but he was also viciously attacked himself. Miraculously surviving, Ronnie bears both physical and emotional scars that are impossible to measure. Many feared that such traumatic memories would leave a lasting, deep wound on his soul, threatening to shape his future in profound ways. During his recovery in the hospital, Ronnie was completely alone. No family by his side, no one to care for or protect him. The heartbreaking image of the boy lying isolated in his hospital bed touched many hearts. Several police officers, moved by his plight, visited him repeatedly, offering comfort during his darkest hours. Among them was Detective Mike Blair, who, although not directly involved in the case, was one of the first responders that night. He remembered seeing Ronnie stumble out of the burning house, battered and barely breathing, with wounds covering his small body. That haunting image stayed with Mike forever. Heartbroken over the boy's suffering, Mike made a point to check on him regularly during his hospital stay. Even after Ronnie was discharged and placed with a foster family, Mike kept his promise, giving his phone number to a Child Protective Services worker and instructing them, "If the boy needs me, call immediately." In August of 2018, Mike received a call from Child Protective Services informing him that Ronnie was struggling to adapt to his foster home and that a new placement was urgently needed. Without hesitation, Mike responded, "Bring the boy to my house." He hadn't even discussed it with his wife, Daniel, but he knew she would open her heart to welcome the child. Ronnie, who had lost everything, deserved a real home, yet adopting him was far from simple. The boy carried severe burns across much of his body, requiring numerous painful surgeries, and more critically, his young soul had been deeply scarred by the family tragedy. Healing him, physically and emotionally, would be an enormous challenge. Additionally, Mike and Daniel already had 5 children, making the decision to take in a stranger with such profound trauma even more difficult. Nevertheless, their compassionate hearts compelled them to act. After months of legal procedures, on the 25th of November 2019, Ronnie officially became part of the Blair family, adopting the name Ronnie Blair and starting a new chapter in his life. During the subsequent trial, Ronnie clung to the fact that he had been adopted, using this as a reason to question the boy's testimony. He loudly insisted that his son had been manipulated, claiming his new family had coached him to falsely accuse his father. In a final effort to discredit his son's testimony, Ronnie decided to re-examine him in court, questioning whether his new relatives had planted negative ideas in his mind. Yet each firm and unwavering answer from little Ronnie shattered his father's last hopes, revealing the boy's resilience. In truth, Mike had never spoken about the tragic incident since adopting Ronnie, understanding better than anyone that the boy had already suffered enough. His priority was not to dredge up the past, but to help Ronnie focus on a brighter future. Thanks to the unconditional love and dedicated care of the Blair family, Ronnie gradually overcame his traumatic memories. His physical wounds healed, but more importantly, his spirit found peace. From a boy who had endured unimaginable pain, Ronnie finally found a true home. With that, the case was resolved. On the second case, it was Friday, June 1st, 2007, in the Hayes Valley neighborhood of San Francisco Bay. Hughes, a 36-year-old man affectionately called Brother Hughes by friends, was filled with happiness. He had recently received a promotion and a raise at Leapfrog, the gaming company, where he served as lead audio engineer. Known for his humor, Hughes often brought joy and laughter to those around him. Around 10:30 in the evening, Hughes and his friends went to Underground SF, a downtown bar. They toasted, sang, and danced, savoring the weekend's festivities. A photo taken during the night captured Hughes in the midst of dancing, wearing a cap, a watch, and holding a drink, an image that would turn out to be his last. By 2 o'clock, the bar closed, and the group parted ways reluctantly. Hughes, a single man full of energy, told his friends he planned to continue the night with a woman he had met. Before leaving, he reminded everyone about their motorcycle ride scheduled for Saturday morning. His friends waved goodbye as he headed home alone, just a 10-minute walk from the bar to his apartment at 462 Linden Street. The following morning at 8:10, Carl, a neighbor in the same building, was preparing to leave when he noticed bloodstains smeared across the front steps near the fence. A cold premonition seized him. Frightened, Carl quickly dialed 911. The San Francisco police arrived promptly and followed a trail of blood leading up the stairs to apartment 462. The door handle was soaked in blood. Despite their persistent knocking, no one responded from inside. With no other option, officers went around to the back, forced open the door, and entered. An overwhelming metallic odor filled the room, which was in disarray. Broken wine glasses, a toppled television, tangled cords, and blood splatters covered the scene, revealing a violent struggle. Desperate scratch marks scarred the walls and doorframe, revealing a frantic struggle. Hughes lay slumped against the bedroom wall, a pool of dried blood surrounding him. He was no longer alive. Based on his body temperature, the coroner's initial report estimated his time of death to be between 2:30 and 3 in the morning, just an hour after he had left the local bar. Only moments earlier he had been laughing and chatting with friends, and now he lay there in a tragic silence. What had transpired in that brief interval? Hughes's sudden death stunned everyone, including his former girlfriend, Melissa Nix. Though she was in Washington, she immediately booked a red-eye flight to San Francisco. Hughes, a French national employed by an American firm, had been deeply loved and valued. Early the next morning, on the other side of the world, his parents were awakened by the relentless ringing of the phone. Groggily, they answered, only to hear Melissa's strained voice. Her words struck like lightning, plunging the elderly couple into profound grief. Their world seemed to shatter in an instant. Overcome with sorrow and confusion, they had no time to fully process the news. Hastily, they packed their belongings and hurriedly headed to the United States. Meanwhile, the San Francisco police faced a perplexing case. The Bay Area had seen many incidents, but none quite like this. The apartment's front and back doors were locked from the inside, with keys still in the lock. The windows were securely shut, showing no signs of forced entry before the police intervened. The apartment was essentially a sealed space, untouched by outsiders. The incident had occurred in the early hours, yet the lights were off inside. Leftover food sat untouched on the kitchen counter, suggesting no one had been there to eat. All evidence pointed to the absence of intruders. Hughes's belongings, his phone, laptop, and wallet, remained untouched. His car keys, driver's license, and $80 in cash were still in his pocket, and receipts confirmed nothing was missing. Clearly, this was not a robbery that turned deadly. The scene revealed a floor covered in blood, with bloody shoe prints. Yet, all footprints belonged to Hughes himself. The patterns were distinct, and there was no sign of a struggle or fight. It seemed Hughes had been moving around the apartment on his own. Following the trail of footprints, investigators noticed tiny blood droplets amid larger smears. These droplets stretched from the front door down the hallway, through the kitchen and living room, stopping where Hughes had collapsed. The droplets were perfectly round, with no streaks, indicating they had fallen straight down in a calm manner. This suggested Hughes had moved very slowly, as if struggling in his final moments. The autopsy commenced at 4:10 in the afternoon. Hughes was approximately 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighed about 176 pounds, and was a Caucasian man with brown hair showing signs of a receding hairline. Hughes' hair was about 4 inches long, and he had undergone a circumcision during his lifetime, details that would later become significant to the case. He had sustained 3 major wounds, all on his left side: a stab wound to the abdomen, another to the chest, and a severe cut to the neck. The neck wound was the most critical, severing an artery and causing rapid, fatal blood loss. Hugh collapsed on the floor, a bruise darkening his forehead, with his arms slightly raised. Scratches marred his forearms, and the broken watch strap on his right wrist lay beneath him. Strikingly, his left hand was clenched tightly around a handful of curly black hair, more than 10 strands, each less than 2 inches long. These details clearly indicated murder. Yet, as the investigation progressed, the case grew increasingly complex. While examining Hughes' belongings, investigators discovered he was more than an ordinary office worker. He possessed an artistic soul, with a passion for reading and writing. Among his possessions, a neatly written quote in his notebook stood out: "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." This famous phrase, popularized by Mahatma Gandhi, caught the police off guard. The phrase suggested a philosophy of embracing life fully and continuously seeking knowledge. But could Hugh have taken his own life? The police fixated on this quote, yet they overlooked its deeper meaning. It encourages living each day as if it were the last and pursuing lifelong learning, not despair or suicide. Their misunderstanding of the quote's true message clouded their judgment. Hugh's phone rested on the nearby coffee table, untouched by blood, indicating he hadn't tried to call for help before dying. In the chaotic kitchen near the sink, 2 steak knives with handles stained reddish-brown were found, believed to be the murder weapons. Outside the apartment, ongoing reports painted a clearer picture. The building contained 4 units, and a neighbor living next door recalled hearing a door forcefully opened and slammed shut around 2:40 a.m., just before Hugh's estimated time of death. They also heard footsteps rushing down the stairs and a loud thud, as if someone had fallen, but no screams or cries for help. The next morning, they learned a murder had taken place. A short distance west of the building, a surveillance camera on a garage door captured blurry footage of Hugh walking alone around 2 a.m. His ex-girlfriend and family confirmed his identity. Throughout the night, the street remained quiet, with no suspicious individuals seen entering or leaving the building. It wasn't until 8:30 a.m. that police arrived at the scene. Piecing together the timeline, it became evident Hugh was alone in his apartment at the time of the attack. The theory of suicide gained further credence from the investigation's findings. The police report confirmed there were no signs of forced entry into the apartment, and all blood and hair samples found there belonged exclusively to Hughes. DNA analysis matched him entirely, leaving little doubt about his involvement. Within less than a week, the San Francisco Police Department reviewed the evidence, reconstructed the sequence of events, and closed the case. Their conclusion was that Hughes, after a night of drinking and drug use at a party, had fallen into a state of hallucination and panic. Returning home, he grabbed a kitchen knife and inflicted 3 stab wounds to his left side, resulting in severe bleeding. The pain briefly restored his clarity, but it was too late. In a desperate attempt to leave a sign for neighbors, he staggered to the door, leaving a trail of blood as he paced outside. Yet, he then re-entered the apartment, waiting silently for death. Hughes, known for his perfectionism, allegedly planned his exit meticulously. He locked the door from inside to prevent himself from changing his mind, then wandered around, leaving bloody fingerprints on the walls. Ultimately, he collapsed in a dramatic spot as if choosing a final act. The police even suggested that Hughes had shown signs of giving up on life beforehand. They claimed the quote from Gandhi was his supposed suicide note, missing only a signature and the words, "This is my suicide note." Confronted with this seemingly absurd conclusion, Hughes's family and friends resolved to seek justice and uncover the truth. Melissa, his former girlfriend, was especially determined, her memories of Hughes always warming her heart. She vowed to investigate beyond the police's narrative, intent on revealing what truly happened. Hughes was born on June 11, 1970, in a small coastal town in Brittany, France. His father, Francois, was an engineer at a nuclear power plant, and coming from a privileged background, Hughes received a solid education. He carried himself with a refined manner and was a source of pride for his parents. In 1998, Hughes moved to New York with 100,000 francs, chasing the American dream. He was quickly captivated by the city's glamour. At a social event, he met Melissa, a reporter, with whom he shared interests ranging from museums and philosophy to art, travel, and animals. Their connection deepened into love. Over the course of 5 years, they experienced breakups and reconciliations, but happiness often defined their relationship. They traveled across the United States and around the world together. Even after their final breakup, they remained close friends. Hughes's friends described him as an eternal optimist, always ready to help others, constantly smiling and maintaining close contact with his parents, calling home weekly. No one could believe he would end his life just as he was about to turn 37. When Melissa and Hughes's parents visited the police station, they were met with cold indifference. The officers suggested that Hughes, with his fascination for Japanese culture, might have committed seppuku, the samurai ritual of ritual suicide. Although the initial reasoning appeared plausible, it was ultimately superficial. Frustrated by police negligence, Melissa believed that honoring Hughes's memory required immediate action. As a journalist, she understood the influence of public opinion and the importance of justice. Together with Hughes's family, friends, and colleagues, she took to the streets, demanding accountability for his death. Despite their grief, Hughes's parents were resolute in ensuring their son's death was not in vain. They hired a private investigator, often called the Columbus of California, who brought 25 years of experience and over 5,000 cases to bear. Within a week, he uncovered a vastly different story, one that sharply contradicted the police's conclusion of suicide. Hugh was an accomplished audio engineer earning more than $70,000 a year. He was cheerful, humorous, passionate, and loved exploring new places. He had accumulated nearly $100,000 in savings, with plans to buy a house in Argentina. Just 2 weeks prior, he had received a promotion and a raise. On the night of the incident, he celebrated at a bar with friends, reminding his best friend about their upcoming motorcycle ride. He also planned to meet a French acquaintance in California that weekend. A young man full of vitality and bright prospects, Hughes had no apparent reason to end his life. However, the investigators soon discovered some troubling secrets. After his breakup with Melissa, Hughes had fallen into a reckless lifestyle. He became a playboy, uninterested in stable relationships, seeking fleeting romantic encounters instead. Social media and adult websites became his outlets. Friends warned him, but he dismissed their advice, continuing his pursuit of thrills and pleasure. On the night in question, as he parted from his friends, Hughes excitedly mentioned he would find a beautiful woman to spend the night with. To make the night more intense, he also used drugs, which connected him to some shady characters. The investigator, familiar with the area, knew Linden Street often attracted sex workers, drug dealers, and gangs late at night. Hughes might have become involved in a deal or made enemies, leading to a possible retaliatory attack. Yet security footage showed him returning home alone with no signs of being followed. The investigator sensed there was a hidden truth, a crucial clue still concealed. As he delved deeper, he received the coroner's report from San Francisco police, and its findings left him stunned. The report stated that aside from alcohol, Hughes showed no traces of drugs in his system. Without drugs, how could he have hallucinated and stabbed himself? Furthermore, the steak knives found at the scene had no blood on their blades, only faint red marks on their handles. The report was also riddled with gaps and inconsistencies. Hughes's father, Francois, expressed his doubts and skepticism about the official account. Hughes stood 6 feet tall, taller than the 5 feet 9 inches often reported. He had never been circumcised and was a passionate karate enthusiast, with a physique that reflected his dedication. If threatened, he would have fought fiercely. Clutched in his left hand was a tuft of black hair that did not belong to him, yet the coroner had not tested it for DNA. Examining the crime scene, investigators identified a blind spot in the security footage, which only recorded movement from west to east, capturing Hugh entering the building but missing anyone approaching from the opposite direction. Based on photographs and the accounts of Hugh's father, a theory emerged. Hugh returned home, opened the door for unknown reasons, and was confronted by an assailant who stabbed him 3 times. During the struggle, Hugh managed to grab a lock of the attacker's hair. Wounded, he retreated inside and locked the door, unable to call for help due to a neck wound. The attacker then climbed over the fence and escaped. If this scenario was accurate, testing the bloodstains on the front steps could have provided crucial clues. However, police claimed no samples had been preserved, as the fire department had washed down the scene to prevent alarm among passers-by, including the bloodless knives found nearby. The police's explanation that Hugh, being a meticulous cleaner, might have wiped the knife even while dying was met with sharp criticism from the media. By December of 2007, the San Francisco police reclassified Hugh's death as of unknown cause. Some journalists suggested it was a tragedy involving a foreigner in America, noting that Hugh, an outsider with no family or close ties in the country, was unlikely to cause political repercussions. Additionally, the region's rising crime and security issues had overwhelmed law enforcement. Due to staffing shortages, authorities hastily labeled the case as a suicide or undetermined death, a move that improved crime statistics and avoided negative impacts on local election campaigns. Hugh's parents, after returning to France, refused to accept the official verdict. They hired legal counsel and took the case to the High Court of Paris. A year later, a team of French investigators was dispatched to San Francisco to reopen the inquiry. Hugh's mother remarked that this was the first time foreign police had intervened in a San Francisco case. However, upon arrival, they faced a cold reception from the local authorities, who refused to share case files. The original detectives and forensic experts involved had long since retired. Frustrated, Hugh's father sought assistance from the French embassy, which eventually contacted Washington authorities. Following their directives, the San Francisco police finally handed over the case documents, allowing the French team to begin their investigation anew. The investigation into Hugh's death was extensive, involving interviews with over 50 individuals, forensic analysis of his computer and phone, and a detailed reconstruction of his final hours. On the morning of June 1st, Hugh arrived at work, exchanged greetings with colleagues, and later returned home at 5 in the evening. After a quick shower, he visited an art gallery for a date, and past 10 o'clock he joined colleagues at a bar to celebrate. Surveillance footage captured him arriving back home shortly after 2:16 a.m., where he began browsing real estate listings in Argentina, logged into social media, and visited an adult website. At 2:20, he called a friend, who later recalled Hugh mentioning his desire to find drugs and spend the night with a woman, his last words. Around 2:40, Hugh's laptop suddenly disconnected, indicating the power cord had been unplugged, though the reason for this remains unknown. Soon after, neighbors reported hearing unusual sounds: a door opening and closing, hurried footsteps on the stairs, followed by an unsettling silence. Hugh was known for his open approach to dating, never turning down women, raising the possibility that he might have provoked an angry partner or husband. Could such a confrontation have led to his murder? A suspect soon emerged: Mark, Hugh's boss. Unlike the colleagues who appeared grief-stricken, Mark's behavior seemed strangely cheerful, almost gleeful. Investigations revealed that Mark's wife had once had an affair with Hugh, fueling suspicion that Mark, humiliated by his subordinate's actions, might have committed the crime. Yet, his alibi held up under scrutiny, clearing him of suspicion. Further clues pointed to a small side door on the right side of the building used for trash disposal or parking, which was not monitored by security cameras. Bloodstains appeared on the brick wall near this door in the crime scene footage, but the San Francisco police overlooked them. By the time French authorities arrived, the scene had been disturbed or destroyed. A second autopsy confirmed Hugh had no drugs in his system, though the curly black hair found in his hand had vanished. The size and depth of the stab wounds suggested a dagger, not a steak knife, was used as the murder weapon. Hugh's attire and final phone call indicated he was preparing for a date when he encountered trouble at his doorstep. The red liquid on the knife turned out to be tomato sauce, not blood, and no murder weapon was found at the scene. The French police uncovered a crucial detail. The security camera at a nearby garage recorded images only every 4 seconds, meaning quick movements could have gone unnoticed. Inside a broken watch strap found beneath Hugh's body, traces of blood were discovered, but DNA analysis showed it did not belong to the victim. After 15 days of investigation, the French authorities issued a comprehensive report concluding Hugh had been murdered. More than a year later, the cause of death was officially classified as homicide. Yet, the identity of the perpetrator remained a mystery. Despite the French authorities' conclusion, the San Francisco Police Department maintained that the case was still under review. However, they showed little initiative in identifying a suspect, neglecting to pursue DNA evidence that could link someone to the crime. They argued there was insufficient proof to compel anyone to provide a DNA sample. Frustrated by this impasse, Hugh's father, Francois, took matters into his own hands in February of 2009, offering $100,000 as a reward to motivate the public to assist in solving the mystery. His flyers quickly circulated through the streets of San Francisco, raising awareness. A new theory emerged suggesting the perpetrator might be someone familiar with the neighborhood. The house on Linden Street was a 2-story building with 2 apartments on each floor. Hugh lived in the right side unit on the first floor, with a couple occupying the left. Upstairs, Carl resided on the right and Craig on the left. After news of the reward spread, an anonymous tip pointed to Craig as a suspect, describing him as unpredictable and capable of violence to silence witnesses. Investigators uncovered that Craig had once been affiliated with a notorious gang involved in drug trafficking, weapons, and other illegal activities. Although he claimed to have reformed, he still carried a small knife, a remnant of his criminal past. Neighbors recalled a heated argument between Craig and Hugh over a parking space, during which loud threats and screams were heard emanating from Craig's apartment. Francois had previously met Craig and found him to be friendly. Craig had even bought Hugh's old bicycle, leaving a positive impression. This raised questions about the motive behind such a brutal act. Could minor disputes truly escalate to murder? The knife Craig carried was a cable-cutting tool, incompatible with Hugh's wounds, which suggested a different weapon was used. After the incident, Craig vanished suddenly, becoming homeless. Despite relentless efforts by private investigators, no progress was made, and the police refused to assist further, citing lack of evidence. Determined to seek justice, Francois dedicated years to traveling between San Francisco and Brittany, collecting DNA samples from residents who had once lived nearby. Though many had moved away, he persisted. He met with anyone who might hold relevant information about the case. With the help of investigators, he managed to persuade Craig to meet at a cafe, hopeful that Craig would agree to provide a DNA sample for testing. In 2010, Melissa emerged as a symbol of hope for Hugh's case. Her relentless dedication and perseverance compelled the police to revisit their initial conclusions. Her efforts earned her the prestigious James Madison Award, and without her, the case might have been forgotten. She courageously exposed the police department's sluggishness, leading to improvements in investigative procedures. Today, Melissa is a well-known journalist who continues to follow Hugh's case annually, questioning the progress of the investigation. Police continue to provide vague responses, yet everyone suspects they are simply avoiding accountability. The latest update on Hugh's case came in November of 2021, when his ex-girlfriend Melissa Nix posted on his memorial Facebook page that the case remains open. Hugh's father, Francois, remains resolute, declaring, "I will never stop seeking the truth, no matter where it leads. I refuse to lose hope. The mystery surrounding Hugh's death remains unsolved." Online communities have proposed two main theories that might unlock the case. The first suggests Hugh was killed during an illegal drug deal. Motives for such crimes often involve romance, money, or revenge, but there's little evidence for the first two. Hugh had no known enemies, making a revenge motive unlikely. The most plausible scenario involves a confrontation with drug traffickers, as Hugh was known to use drugs occasionally. On the night of his death, he told friends he was seeking something to boost his excitement. His neighborhood was a hot spot for drug gangs, skilled at avoiding surveillance and familiar with the terrain. Francois noted that Hugh's apartment lights remained on after he returned home, possibly indicating a drug exchange. An arriving dealer was met with a dispute rather than a transaction, resulting in Hugh's death. The killer escaped through a route free of cameras while Hugh collapsed inside. The second theory involves a mistaken killing related to Craig. Given Craig's troubled past and complex connections, he might have been targeted. The perpetrators, familiar with the building's blind spots, set an ambush but ended up killing Hugh instead. They may have entered the wrong apartment or killed him to cover their mistake. In the darkness, Hugh could have been stabbed accidentally, or the killers, fearing exposure, silenced him to eliminate witnesses. 18 years after the incident at 62 Linden Street, the building is now enclosed by a sturdy fence. Yet, Hugh's death remains an unresolved mystery. His loved ones continue their relentless quest for justice. Hugh's story serves as a stark reminder of life's fragility and the importance of remembrance. Over a decade has passed, and the case has opened multiple investigative paths, from motives rooted in romance and personal conflicts to drug-related violence or mistaken identity. Still, no theory has enough evidence to definitively close the case, leaving it an enduring enigma. As this story concludes, Hugh's case remains open, emphasizing the importance of safety, especially for those living abroad in areas with inadequate security. Being cautious around strangers, avoiding late-night outings, and staying connected with loved ones can help mitigate risks. On February 24th, 2023, Fairfax County Police responded to a call from the Banfield family home. Joseph Ryan, identified as the perpetrator, broke into a house wielding a knife and attacked Christine Banfield, who was alone at the time. He was quickly subdued by Brendan Banfield, Christine's husband, and Juliana Perez, the family's nanny who had worked for them for nearly 2 years, arriving shortly after the assault. Christine was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but ultimately succumbed to her injuries. What initially appeared to be a straightforward home invasion that ended in murder later revealed itself as part of a broader conspiracy. Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I want to share a case from Virginia that reads like a suspense thriller, filled with betrayal, intrigue, and tragedy. This story is quite detailed, so I ask you to stay with me until the end to fully grasp all its twists. Now, let's begin. In 2003, at age 18, Christine enrolled at Quinnipiac University in Connecticut to study nursing. During her first year in 2004, she met Brendan Robert Banfield, and they soon began dating. Christine graduated in 2007, and a year later, Brendan proposed. Their engagement lasted nearly 2 years, culminating in their wedding on June 12, 2010, when Christine was 24 and Brendan 25. Christine was a passionate nurse, often working 16-hour night shifts, a demanding schedule she loved. On social media, she occasionally shared her fitness journey at a nearby gym, sometimes posting photos with Brendan, who was supportive and encouraging. She once wrote about how happy she felt when her husband motivated her at the gym, especially after noticing the positive changes in her body due to her healthy routine. Brendan, in contrast, was more reserved and rarely shared personal details online. He worked as a federal agent for the IRS, investigating potential tax fraud and evasion. Together, Christine and Brendan built a life rooted in shared goals and mutual support. Those close to them described a very united couple who enjoyed attending soccer matches, parties, taking vacations, and traveling abroad. Originally from New York, they later moved to Virginia, settling in H. Herndon, a city in Fairfax County with over 24,000 residents. They lived in a luxurious $1 million home in a desirable neighborhood. This story of a seemingly ordinary couple's life and tragic end is intertwined with a complex conspiracy, revealing that beneath the surface things are often more complicated than they appear. The couple enjoyed a prosperous financial situation, both earning substantial salaries that allowed them to live comfortably. Their demanding careers often required them to travel separately for work, sometimes being away from home for several days. Christine once shared on social media that she had to leave her dog at a pet hotel because she and Brendan were traveling simultaneously to different destinations. In another post, she mentioned she had already returned home but was missing her husband, who had not yet arrived. In October of 2017, at the age of 32, Christine announced she was 3 months pregnant. By March 30th of the following year, she had given birth to a daughter. From that point, she began sharing her experiences as a mother online, posting numerous photos of herself, her child, and her husband. In 2019, the Banfield family decided to participate in the au pair program through the Culture Care Agency. For those unfamiliar, the au pair program is an international exchange initiative where individuals travel abroad to care for children and pursue studies in exchange for housing, meals, a salary, and travel opportunities. It is notably the most affordable long-term exchange option available. The program's costs are significantly lower than other similar arrangements, as participants work as nannies, caring for the host family's children while living with them. This arrangement grants the nanny legal residence in the United States and provides financial support. Both parties, family and nanny, stand to benefit. The family gains affordable child care assistance, and the nanny gains language skills, cultural exposure, and travel experiences. Before finalizing any agreement, the family conducts a thorough interview to assess compatibility with the prospective nanny. This interview aims to gather detailed information about the candidate's background and personality. If the match is suitable, the nanny then moves to the United States and lives with the family for a period ranging from 1 to 2 years. The Banfield family sought a trustworthy caregiver for their daughter, which eventually led to one of the most widely discussed crimes in recent American history. In April of 2019, a Brazilian woman named Amanda arrived in the United States through the au pair program and became part of the Banfield household. After spending 2 years with them, Amanda posted on social media in April of 2021 to thank her hosts for the opportunity and announced she intended to stay an additional 6 months. Although the program typically allows stays of 1 to 2 years, Amanda was granted this extension by the government due to the global health crisis, which imposed travel restrictions and delayed her departure. Amanda's bond with the Banfield family was notably warm and close. Their social media profiles often displayed shared moments, vacations, celebrations, birthdays, and dinners, highlighting a genuine camaraderie. During her tenure as an au pair nanny, Amanda met a man in the United States and their relationship quickly blossomed. Sometime later, they became engaged, and on September 25th, 2021, they tied the knot. Amanda's posts from that period reveal the Banfield's active participation in her wedding, with her own daughter serving as the flower girl. The closeness was so evident that Christine, a family member, considered Amanda part of their family circle. When Amanda's assignment with the Banfield family concluded, she moved to another state with her husband, yet maintained regular contact and visited whenever possible. Her positive experience with the au pair program inspired the Banfields to seek another nanny through the same agency. Christine, eager for the new nanny to also be Brazilian, took charge of the search. It didn't take long before they found Juliana Perez Magalhães, who was 23 years old. Like Amanda, Juliana was Brazilian, hailing from Sao Paulo, and had graduated in nursing in 2020. Soon after, she began exploring how the au pair program operated and how interviews with host families were conducted. On August 9th, 2021, Juliana announced on her social media that she would soon be arriving in the United States. She had an interview at the American consulate in Brazil on September 20th, and shortly thereafter she flew to the U.S. Notably, Amanda's wedding took place on September 25th, meaning Juliana arrived in the United States immediately after Amanda's departure from the program and moved in with the Banfield family. At that time, Juliana was dating someone back in Brazil, and she shared on social media that he planned to visit her. By December, she mentioned she had been in the United States for 2 months, but hadn't met many people yet, and she was looking for Brazilian friends to celebrate Christmas and New Year or to travel with. After completing her first year with the Banfields, Juliana extended her contract for another year. Their relationship was good, though not as close as Amanda's, but evidently positive enough for the family to want her to stay longer. Like Christine, Juliana was also a nurse, which created a shared professional background. Her social media featured fewer photos with the family compared to Amanda's, but there were still images showing her with the Banfields, illustrating a respectful and amicable relationship. While it may not hold any definitive significance, I mention this detail to highlight the context of the case. Many social media users tend to be more discreet, posting less about their lives, though this varies among individuals according to those close to the Banfield family. Everything appeared to be going smoothly with the new nanny, but that impression was misleading. On the morning of February 24th, 2023, at approximately 7:50 a.m., a call was placed to 911 from Juliana's phone. The call lasted only a few seconds before ending abruptly. About 13 minutes later, a second call was made from Juliana's device, during which she informed authorities that a friend of hers was injured. At that moment, Brendan, Christine's husband, reportedly took the phone and told the dispatcher that he had found his wife with knife wounds in their bedroom and had shot a man named Ryan. Police responded swiftly, arriving at the Banfield residence in less than 10 minutes. Inside, officers discovered a man already dead on the floor and Christine Banfield severely wounded in an upstairs bedroom. She was rushed to the hospital alive but succumbed to her injuries later. Their 4-year-old daughter was also present but was unharmed. Brendan, however, sustained a leg injury and was taken to the hospital as well. Initial police reports identified the deceased as Joseph Ryan, age 38, who allegedly broke into the home and attacked Christine with a knife, only to be shot multiple times in self-defense. At that stage, that was all the information available. After being discharged, Brendan refused to speak with detectives or the media about the incident. Conversely, Juliana cooperated fully, providing a statement to the police. She recounted arriving at the Banfield house that morning and witnessing Ryan's break-in. In panic, she called Brendan, who was not home at the time, and asked for help. Brendan reportedly told Juliana to stay calm, promising he would return shortly. Juliana then waited outside for him, claiming it was for her safety. When Brendan arrived, they entered the house together and found Christine badly injured. During this encounter, they confronted Ryan still inside and engaged in a physical struggle. Brendan managed to retrieve a weapon and shot Ryan multiple times in the chest, resulting in his immediate death. Brendan later confirmed Juliana's account, stating he shot Ryan in self-defense. An unusual detail in Juliana's statement was her claim that she arrived early to work at the Banfield residence, although, as known from the au pair program, nannies typically live with the family. The whereabouts of Juliana prior to her arrival at the Banfield residence remained uncertain. The crime shocked the town of H. Herndon, and as new details emerged, the case garnered headlines nationwide. For months, authorities withheld information, choosing to keep the investigation confidential. Meanwhile, neighbors reported that Juliana continued to visit the Banfield home, though it was unclear if she was residing there. Witnesses often saw her with the Banfield's daughter, fueling speculation that she still worked as the family's nanny. In August of 2023, Juliana publicly announced on social media that she was seeking a new babysitting position nearby. Since the au pair program prohibited seeking other employment while enrolled, it was likely she had left the program around that time. After more than 7 months of investigation, police made progress by gathering evidence and forensic data. Juliana reportedly told her mother in Brazil that the authorities believed Joseph Ryan had murdered Christine Banfield over a misunderstanding, as they were lovers. On October 19th of 2023, Juliana was arrested, an event she reportedly found surprising. Her arrest stemmed from the police's conclusion that she was the one who shot Joseph Ryan, contradicting her and Brendan's earlier statements that he had fired the shots. Investigators also determined that at the moment Juliana fired, Brendan had not yet arrived at the house. Following her detention, Juliana Perez faced charges of second-degree murder and was held at the Fairfax County Detention Center. Public opinion largely sympathized with Juliana, with many viewing her as a heroine who acted to protect the family that had given her a chance in the United States. Some even believed Brendan's attempt to shield Juliana was justified, asserting he was the one who shot Joseph, especially considering Juliana's status as a foreigner with a temporary visa, which could have endangered her future. Initially, authorities confirmed that Christine and Joseph Ryan shared some form of relationship, noting the absence of forced entry into the house, implying Joseph had been let inside by Christine. This was peculiar because in her police statement, Juliana claimed Joseph had invaded the home, creating a contradiction. It was also unclear whether Juliana knew Joseph Ryan or had seen him previously, with investigators exploring this possibility. At her arrest, the police chief emphasized that the case was far from closed, promising ongoing investigations to piece together all the facts. It was also revealed that months earlier, Juliana had posted on social media about being in a relationship with an American. Subsequently, it was revealed that the individual Juliana had been referring to was actually Brendan Banfield, a discovery that added layers of complexity to the case. When this detail became public opinion shifted dramatically. Supporters who once viewed Juliana as a heroine began to question her innocence and the entire narrative. Online, various theories proliferated, with the most prominent suggesting that Juliana and Brendan had been involved in an affair for some time and had conspired to commit the crime together. According to this theory, Brendan's potential divorce from Christine would have forced a division of their assets, so he and Juliana allegedly staged the attack to cover their tracks, using Joseph Ryan as a scapegoat. Another popular hypothesis claimed that on the day of the incident, Brendan and Juliana were away together, and upon returning home, they were confronted by Christine and Joseph Ryan. In this version, Joseph was a private detective hired by Christine to uncover an affair which she suspected for months. The confrontation reportedly escalated and into a physical altercation, leading to the decision to eliminate Christine and Joseph. Yet another theory posited that Christine and Joseph were lovers, and Brendan, upon discovering them in bed, had killed both out of rage, with Juliana supposedly covering for him. Following these events, the couple was believed to have begun a relationship. These theories were among the most circulated online when initial details of the case emerged. Shortly after Juliana's arrest, her mother granted an interview to a Brazilian newspaper. She expressed concern over her inability to contact Juliana's lawyer in the United States, noting that her daughter planned to return to Brazil soon as her visa was about to expire. Juliana intended to renew her visa in Brazil and then return to the United States. Her mother also voiced sadness over the defamatory rumors circulating online, emphasizing that Juliana was incapable of harming anyone. She concluded by hoping the case would be resolved swiftly. During her first court appearance, Juliana explained to the judge that earlier that morning, Christine had given her tickets to the zoo so she could take their 4-year-old daughter, as Brendan was not at home. Juliana claimed that Christine did this to have time alone at home to meet Joseph Ryan, whom she had connected with through a dating website. Juliana clarified that it was not a typical dating site, but one aimed at those seeking more direct encounters. She added that while on her way to the zoo with her daughter, she remembered she had forgotten the child's lunch and decided to return home to retrieve it. As she approached the house, Juliana noticed an unfamiliar car parked in front of the garage. She then saw a man exit the vehicle and enter the residence. This man was Joseph Ryan. Fear overtook her as she didn't recognize him and suspected he might be a criminal attempting to break in. Panicked, she immediately called Brendan to inform him of the situation. According to reports, Brendan advised her to stay outside, promising he would arrive shortly. When he arrived, they entered the house together, and Juliana attempted to call emergency services, but hung up quickly, unsure of what to say. Inside, she took the Banfield's daughter to the basement for safety, while Brendan drew his weapon and stayed alert. Moments later, they heard noises from the upstairs bedroom. Ascending the stairs, they found Joseph Ryan standing over Christine, holding a knife. Christine was unclothed and Joseph was dressed. Brendan aimed his gun at Joseph, demanding he drop the weapon, but Joseph threatened Brendan, saying he would attack Christine if Brendan didn't lower his gun. Suddenly, Joseph began stabbing Christine, prompting Brendan to fire his weapon. Most shots missed Joseph, who continued stabbing Christine despite the gunfire. Brendan then shouted for Juliana to retrieve his other firearm from the safe in the bathroom. When she returned with the weapon, instead of handing it to Brendan, Juliana shot Joseph in the heart, delivering a fatal wound. Immediately afterward, they called Deviatsot Odinadsat to report the incident. Juliana's defense maintains that her actions were in self-defense, supporting this version of events. However, during the same hearing, the prosecution presented a contrasting narrative. They claimed that Brendan and Juliana had been having an affair for months, and that on the day of the crime, Brendan had deliberately skipped work, having already planned everything. According to the prosecution, Brendan left the house pretending to go to work, but actually waited nearby for Juliana's call. They alleged that Joseph Ryan was lured to the Banfield residence under the false impression he would meet Christine. The prosecution further stated that Brendan or Juliana created a fake online profile of Christine on a dating website using her laptop, initiating contact with Joseph Ryan while inside the family's home. These conversations, they argued, appeared suspicious to Christine's family and friends, who noted that Christine's writing style was inconsistent with her usual manner. After some exchanges, a meeting was arranged at the house, with Joseph receiving the date, time, and address. On that day, Joseph arrived and was greeted by Juliana, which explained the absence of forced entry. Soon after, he was ambushed by Brendan. For days, Brendan and Juliana meticulously planned and staged the crime scene, aiming to eliminate any obstacle, most notably Christine. Their ultimate goal was to remove her so Brendan could avoid dividing their assets during a divorce and enjoy the entire inheritance alongside Juliana. During the hearing, an employee from a shooting ranch testified that Brendan and Juliana had visited the ranch 2 months prior to the crime. The same witness revealed that a month before the incident, Brendan had visited alone and purchased a Glock pistol for $778.50. Police later confirmed that this was the same firearm found in the safe and used by Juliana to fatally shoot Joseph Ryan. Additionally, Brendan and Juliana had exchanged mobile phones just 4 days before the murder, which prosecutors argued was clear evidence of premeditation. During the hearing, prosecutors displayed photographs of the house on the day of the crime, as well as images taken months after Juliana's arrest. These later photos showed her former room empty, with her belongings, clothes, makeup, and personal items moved into Brendan's room, which had previously belonged to Christine. The images also revealed that photos of Brendan with Christine and their daughter had been removed and replaced with pictures of Brendan with Juliana, some including their daughter. The defense acknowledged a possible relationship between Brendan and Juliana, but insisted that Juliana, who had been employed as a nanny, did not have a serious connection with Brendan. They pointed out that both Brendan and Christine had engaged in extramarital affairs, suggesting a pattern of unfaithfulness on both sides. Brendan addressed the court briefly, but he and his lawyer invoked the Fifth Amendment, refusing to answer questions that could incriminate him, resulting in only minimal responses. At the conclusion of the hearing, prosecutors requested that Juliana remain detained, citing the high risk of flight. They noted that she had attempted to obtain another passport after her original was confiscated during the investigation. Juliana's defense countered, arguing that she had been advised to apply for a new passport simply to have valid identification while in the country, and that her attempt to secure a replacement was not an escape plan. Ultimately, the judge approved the prosecution's request, ruling that Juliana Perez should stay in custody without bail until her trial. Brendan Robert Banfield remained under police investigation, yet continued to be at large. As previously noted, he initially refused to cooperate with detectives or the media, promptly hiring legal counsel. When he eventually decided to speak, Brendan claimed responsibility for shooting Joseph Ryan. However, once evidence indicated that Juliana had fired the fatal shot, he altered his account. Reports reveal that Brendan's daughter with Christine was placed in the care of relatives during the ongoing inquiry. At that stage, the only publicly available detail about Joseph Ryan was his age, 38, and that he had a profile on a dating website where he interacted with Christine's account. On September 16, 2024, after months of investigation, authorities arrested Brendan Banfield. He faced charges of first-degree murder for the deaths of both Christine and Joseph Ryan. Prosecutors accused him of plotting to kill them both within his residence, where he lived with his wife, and of using a firearm during the commission of a crime. Specific evidence supporting the conspiracy allegations was not disclosed, only that Brendan and Juliana had planned a trip to Brazil. A few days later, Brendan's initial court appearance took place. During this hearing, officials disclosed that Brendan had started a relationship with Juliana in August of 2022. Juliana had arrived at the Banfield household in September of the previous year to serve as a nanny, at which time she was dating a man who remained in Brazil. It was also revealed that, just a month before the incident, Brendan and Juliana traveled together to New York, where they stayed in a hotel and attended a show. During the hearing, Brendan testified that on the morning of the crime, he left his house around 7-Eleven, stopping at a nearby McDonald's about 8 minutes away for breakfast, a routine he often followed on his way to work. He claimed that at approximately 7:37, Juliana called him, reporting that an unknown man had broken into their home. He then hurried back, leaving his breakfast unfinished. The prosecution introduced a recording of Juliana's first emergency call, in which Joseph Ryan's groans of pain could be heard in the background. The call lasted only 8 seconds before Juliana hung up. When questioned, Brendan explained that the call was not answered because he and Juliana couldn't locate the phone, which had fallen somewhere inside the house. He also stated that at that moment, he instructed Juliana to retrieve his other gun from the bathroom safe, believing Joseph Ryan was still alive and a threat. However, when Juliana returned with the weapon, instead of passing it to Brendan, she shot Joseph, hitting him in the heart. There was a 13-minute gap between Juliana's first and second calls to Diviazzo Odinadzat, a delay that authorities found unusually long. Given that Joseph Ryan was already injured before the initial call, it made little sense for Juliana and Brendan to wait so long before seeking help again. Prosecutors revealed that Joseph's body had been repositioned to create the illusion that he was attacking Christine at the time of the crime. Investigators confirmed that the murder weapon, a knife, belonged to Joseph and had been carried in his backpack. His online conversations with Christine indicated she had asked him to bring the knife, driven by a fetish involving pain and pleasure. The website where they connected was a platform centered on casual encounters with a focus on such fetishes, explaining why Joseph brought the weapon to their meeting at the Banfield house. Authorities noted that this location was convenient for staging a scene afterward. Paramedics responding to the scene observed that both Christine and Joseph had been moved and repositioned. Joseph's arms were blood-stained, as was Christine's, and their blood was crossed in a way that suggested they could not have moved themselves after Joseph was fatally shot in the chest. During rescue efforts, Brendan showed no concern for Christine's condition. Instead, he repeatedly asked paramedics if Joseph was still alive. This behavior was interpreted as a sign that Brendan was worried Joseph might reveal the truth about what had transpired. Blood spatter analysis further supported the theory that both victims had been moved before emergency responders arrived, with forensic reports confirming these manipulations. In August, the police received 2 detailed reports from blood spatter experts, which played a crucial role in establishing that the bodies had been repositioned after the injuries occurred. Days prior to the attack, Joseph had confided in a friend that Christine's marriage was not monogamous and that both she and Brendan were seeing others with mutual consent. These claims stemmed from his online conversations with Christine. In one exchange, Joseph reportedly sent her photos of the items he planned to bring, including the knife, cuffs, and belts, mentioning he intended to cut her pajamas during their meeting. Police later discovered a pair of women's pajamas with a cut in the room where the crime took place, though it remained unclear whether Joseph had been responsible for the damage. Known for sharing details of his encounters openly with friends, Joseph often discussed the arrangements he made through the website. During police interviews with some friends, it emerged that Joseph had never spoken to Christine by phone or video call. He had no prior voice contact with her before the day of the crime. This detail is significant because investigators suspect that the profile claiming to be Christine on the site was actually created by someone else, most likely Brendan or Juliana. If Joseph had spoken to Christine directly, it would suggest she was real and not just a fake profile. Conversely, if he only communicated through texts, it supports the theory that Juliana was impersonating Christine, especially since Juliana's strong Brazilian accent would have been noticeable if she had spoken to Joseph. Authorities believe that, aside from the messages, Joseph never had any real voice contact with Christine. Friends who spoke with police also confirmed that Joseph was never violent, and they doubted he would have harmed Christine. From the day Juliana was arrested on October 19, 2023, until Brendan's arrest on September 16, 2024, he maintained constant contact with her. In one recorded conversation, Juliana allegedly expressed concern, saying, "I hope you're not with me just because you're afraid I'll turn against you." Brendan reportedly told her to be quiet. His trial was scheduled for February of 2025, while Juliana's was set for November 12th of the same year. However, in late October of 2024, Juliana opted to avoid a public trial by striking a plea deal with prosecutors. She pleaded guilty to manslaughter and agreed to testify against Brendan at his upcoming trial. The prosecution indicated that her sentencing would be delayed until Brendan's case concluded, as her testimony could influence both the judge's decision and her own punishment. Based on evidence from Juliana's confession, authorities reconstructed a timeline of events. They found that in August of 2022, Brendan began an extramarital affair with Juliana Perez. By fall of the following year, Brendan reportedly told Juliana he wanted to eliminate his wife, Christine, and soon started planning the murder. He created a fake profile for Christine on an adult dating site, mainly used for fetishes involving pleasure and pain. Through this profile, Brendan communicated with various men, eventually initiating contact with Joseph Ryan. On February 24th of 2023, Brendan arranged a meeting at the Banfield family home, believing he was meeting Christine. During their conversations where Brendan impersonated Christine, he told Joseph she wanted him to bring a knife and other items as she was interested in exploring certain fantasies. A few days before the meeting, Brendan asked Juliana to speak with Joseph via voice call on Telegram, pretending to be Christine to make the encounter more convincing. It remains uncertain whether Joseph noticed Juliana's Brazilian accent during their call, as he never mentioned it to his friends. Brendan may have invented a story to explain the unfamiliar tone, perhaps suggesting Christine had Brazilian roots or had lived there for years. Since Brendan and Juliana had meticulously planned everything in advance, they likely crafted a cover story to conceal this detail. During her confession, Juliana told authorities she did not want to be involved in the crime. She claimed she had told Brendan she didn't believe he would go so far, but once she realized he was serious, she tried to back out. Brendan, however, allegedly told her it was too late to turn back. On the morning of February 24th, 2023, Brendan handed Juliana a firearm, which he had bought on January 28th of that year. The plan was for Juliana to call Christine and Brendan immediately upon seeing Joseph Ryan enter the Banfield residence, claiming a stranger had entered and she was terrified. She followed this plan, making both calls as soon as Joseph arrived. Her call to Christine went to voicemail because Brendan had turned off his wife's phone and hidden it in a kitchen drawer earlier that morning. Brendan waited at a nearby McDonald's to receive Juliana's call, allowing him to return home swiftly. When Juliana called, Brendan also tried to reach Christine, but her call went straight to voicemail, as expected. Brendan then returned home, picked up Juliana and their daughter, and they entered through the basement. They left the child there and went upstairs to Brendan's bedroom, where he lived with Christine. Brendan carried his service weapon, while Juliana held the gun he had given her that morning. Inside the room, Joseph was holding Christine, and Brendan shouted that he was the police before shooting Joseph in the head. The bullet caused Joseph to fall away from Christine. After the shot, Juliana called Deviatso Odinadsat. Her call was brief, but Joseph's groans could be heard in the background. Following Brendan's instructions, she ended the call, and shortly after, Brendan grabbed the knife Joseph had brought and began stabbing Christine multiple times. The Deviatso Odinadsat operator tried to call back, but Juliana did not answer. She then went to the safe, opened it, and appeared to retrieve the gun, although she had already had it with her from the start. Returning to the room, Juliana saw Joseph still moving and shot him in the heart, delivering a fatal wound confirmed by the medical examiner. After staging the scene by placing Christine and Joseph's bodies close together to suggest Joseph had attacked Christine, Brendan instructed Juliana to call Deviatso Odinadsat again. In this second call, Juliana claimed that an intruder had broken into the Banfield residence and attacked Christine. When police and paramedics arrived, Brendan took Christine to the hospital, while Juliana accompanied their daughter to the police station. The rest of the story is now widely known. A key detail is that when Brendan and Juliana went upstairs, they saw Joseph holding Christine, who was unclothed. This occurred because, during conversations between Brendan, posing as Christine, and Joseph, they had discussed a fantasy involving Christine being dominated by an intruder wielding a knife and cutting her pajamas. Investigators found Christine's pajamas torn near the bed, confirming this. Joseph believed he was participating in this fantasy when he entered the house, unaware of the true danger. Christine, likely trying to stop him, thought it was part of the role play, as they had communicated through messages about such scenarios. Juliana Perez's confession leaves no doubt that the crime was a conspiracy between her and Brendan to murder Christine and be together. Brendan Banfield's trial is set for February of next year, with Juliana's sentencing to follow shortly after. The presiding judge, Penny Ascaret, who previously oversaw the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, is handling Brendan's trial, fueling intense public interest. Joseph Ryan's mother has refrained from giving interviews to avoid interfering with the investigation. When Brendan was arrested, she posted on social media, expressing her grief over her son's arrest and her hope that justice would be served. Both families are deeply shocked by the events. Currently, the couple's 6-year-old daughter is in the care of close relatives. Case 4 concerns Mike Monshalt, born on August 20th, 1998, in Oldenburg, a German city with over 160,000 residents. He was the son of Baron and Susan Monshalt. His parents enjoyed financial stability, providing him with a comfortable childhood. Described as an energetic and adventurous boy, Mike was full of curiosity. During his early years, his parents faced marital difficulties and eventually divorced. Afterward, Mike lived primarily with his mother, Suzanne, who later entered a new relationship and gave birth to a daughter named Maria. Meanwhile, Baron also found a new partner and had a son named Daniel. Mike reportedly got along well with both Maria and Daniel, having always wished for siblings to share his adventures and avoid loneliness. From a young age, Mike developed a strong passion for traveling and exploring new places. Mike inherited his adventurous spirit from his father, who often took him on journeys to diverse destinations such as Iceland, Scotland, and the Caribbean. Their most memorable trip was a transatlantic sailboat voyage that spanned over 700 days, leaving an indelible mark on both of them. His father described Mike as a gentle, courteous boy with a calm demeanor, despite his innate curiosity and love for exploration. In July of 2016, Mike embarked on a solo trip to Malta, marking his first journey without family or friends. His goal was to reunite with his girlfriend, who was studying the language there. As he was on vacation, he seized the chance to spend quality time with her. For those unfamiliar, Malta is a picturesque archipelago in the Mediterranean, situated about 58 miles south of Sicily. The nation, home to roughly 500,000 residents within a territory of just over 122 square miles, draws countless tourists annually. Summers are hot by European standards, often reaching around 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes its stunning beaches especially crowded. Malta is also known for its low crime rates and status as a significant tax haven. It might seem surprising that Mike's parents allowed him to travel alone at just 16. However, they trusted his maturity, given his extensive travel experience around the world, which had equipped him to handle situations that many adults might find challenging. His responsible nature reassured them of his capability. Mike arrived in Malta on July 8, 2016, landing in Valletta, the capital. There he met his girlfriend, and they spent several days exploring and enjoying each other's company. As his departure date from Malta approached, Mike decided to extend his stay. His girlfriend returned to Germany alone, while he informed his parents that he wished to remain a few more days to discover more of the island. Both his mother Suzanne back home in Germany and his father Baron, vacationing with his family in Croatia, approved his decision. During his extended stay, Mike checked into a hotel called Astra, located in Sliema, a bustling city on Malta's northeast coast. Sliema is a densely populated area known for its residential buildings, shopping centers, bars, restaurants, and cafes. On the morning of July 18th at approximately 8:39, Mike was seen leaving his hotel room, number 105. About 31 minutes later at 9:10, he approached the reception to inquire about something and engaged in a brief conversation with the staff. Afterward, he returned to his room for nearly an hour before leaving again around 9:55. In hotel security footage, Mike is seen wearing a blue t-shirt, carrying a black backpack over his shoulder, and holding a cell phone. Inside his backpack, he had packed a GoPro camera, a portable charger, documents, a credit card, and cash. The day was hot and sunny, and Mike was eager to enjoy it to the fullest. After leaving the hotel, he headed to a nearby port, where he rented a mountain bike for the day. The bike, a Lombardo in blue and black, was his chosen mode of exploration. At 10:11 in the morning, Mike sent a voice message via WhatsApp to his father, informing him that he had rented a bike and planned to cycle around Malta. He warned that some roads were quite steep, so he might have to walk, pushing the bike in certain areas. He also mentioned he would send a photo soon, but never did, and that was the last time Byrne heard from his son. Although Mike didn't contact his family afterward, they initially assumed he was simply busy exploring the captivating island. On July 22nd, Mike's mother Suzanne and his sister Maria went to the airport, expecting him to arrive there. However, Mike never showed up. At first, they thought he might have landed in Frankfurt, where he had a layover. Suzanne tried calling his phone, but it was turned off. She made several attempts to reach him, all unsuccessful. Frustrated, she contacted the airline responsible for his flight to Germany and discovered that Mike had not boarded the plane. Alarmed, she reported her son missing to the police around 2 o'clock in the morning on July 23rd. The German authorities prioritized the case and quickly coordinated with Maltese police. A detective learned that Maltese officers had already been searching for Mike for at least 2 days. Mike had not been seen on the island since the morning of July 18th, when he rented the mountain bike he was supposed to return the next day, but never did. The manager of the Astro Hotel reported his disappearance on July 20th, after Mike failed to return to collect his belongings and check out. 4 days had passed since anyone last saw him, yet no one from Malta had contacted his family in Germany to inform them. Some sources suggest the authorities lacked his family's contact details, while others imply negligence. When Mike's father, Baron, finally learned of his son's disappearance, he halted his vacation and immediately flew to Malta with Daniel, Mike's brother, to find him. Despite the tense circumstances, Baron endeavored to maintain his composure. He tirelessly considered all possible reasons why his son had not boarded the flight scheduled for that day. Perhaps Mike had missed it altogether, lost his phone, or had it stolen. Throughout the ordeal, the family clung to hope, convinced that Mike might appear at any moment. What troubled Baron most was the fact that Mike's phone remained turned off, adding to the uncertainty. He maintained constant contact with Maltese authorities, actively participating in the search efforts. The police scoured every island in Malta, investigating whether Mike had taken any local ferry or small aircraft. Flyers were distributed nationwide, and every tip from informants was thoroughly pursued. Meanwhile, Mike's mother stayed in Germany, kept regularly updated on the progress of the investigation. On the 24th of July, 2016, Interpol became involved, transforming the case into an international effort with cooperation between Germany and Malta. 8 days after Mike's disappearance, on July 26th, Maltese police received an anonymous tip. The source of this information was never disclosed, nor was it confirmed whether the authorities identified the caller. The tip indicated that Mike was believed to be near the cliffs on the island's west coast. These cliffs, known as Dingley Cliffs, rise about 820 feet and are a popular tourist destination due to their breathtaking views of the Mediterranean. Located close to the catacombs of Robat, another well-visited site, the cliffs are easily accessible. The person who rented a bike to Mike recalled a brief conversation during which the teenager expressed interest in visiting the catacombs, making it likely he had passed through that area. A team of police officers, supported by sniffer dogs, firefighters, and paramedics, was dispatched to search the cliffs. Mike's father and brother hurried to the scene, arriving just as journalists gathered to question them. Soon after, emergency responders and an ambulance arrived. Hours into the search, the sniffer dogs indicated they had detected something nearby. Authorities asked Barron and Daniel to stay back to avoid interfering with the rescue efforts. Tragically, the news soon broke. Mike had been found, but he was no longer alive. His body was discovered at the bottom of the cliffs, concealed beneath bushes on a rocky outcrop. The location was difficult to access and hidden from view from the top, explaining why no one had seen him despite the area's popularity among tourists. The bike Mike had rented was found about 98 feet above his body, badly damaged with a flat tire and bent handlebars. His remains were recovered and transported for an autopsy to determine the cause of death. The investigators recovered several personal items belonging to the victim at the scene and sent them for forensic analysis. Among these were Mike's sneakers and sunglasses discovered close to his body, yet curiously, he was found barefoot. His backpack, which he had taken from the hotel, containing essential belongings such as his phone, laptop, GoPro camera, cash, and credit card, was missing. An unusual detail was the presence of fresh hay near the body, untouched by sunlight, as if someone had stepped on it, causing it to detach from the sole of a shoe. Since Mike was barefoot and his sneakers lay several feet away, he couldn't have left the hay there. The police questioned a nearby farmer who owned land near the site where Mike was found about the hay. The farmer claimed ignorance. Mike's father, Barron, also spoke with him, asking whether he had seen Mike or knew where the backpack might be. Barron noted that the farmer's behavior was odd. He seemed reluctant to answer and appeared uncomfortable, insisting he knew nothing. Despite the shock of losing his son, Barron remained determined to uncover the truth. Daniel, Mike's close brother, was deeply affected by the tragedy. They had shared dreams of traveling the world together, plans now shattered by this loss. Suzanne, upon hearing the news, was in disbelief, unable to accept such a devastating reality. Maria, equally devastated, mourned the brother she had known her entire life, now forever gone. Mike's girlfriend, who had arrived in Germany days earlier, was profoundly shaken, having recently been with him and eager to reunite. The case sparked widespread outrage in Malta, where such incidents were rare and drew significant media attention in Germany, given the family's origins. During the investigation, strange occurrences began to unfold. Since Mike was an avid photographer and videographer, especially of his Malta trip, finding his GoPro camera could have provided crucial clues. If he had recorded his activities that day, footage from the device might have helped solve the case swiftly. When Mike's body was discovered, authorities collected 3 of his belongings, his sneakers, sunglasses, and the GoPro case attached to his belt. It remains unclear whether the camera itself was with him or had gone missing during the search, as the case was empty. During the body collection, Barron specifically inquired about the whereabouts of the GoPro, hoping it might hold vital evidence. The lead investigator reportedly told him that she had seen the GoPro case attached to Mike's belt and that it had been cataloged and collected by the other officers. She was also the one who watched over Mike's body until all evidence was gathered. Upon arriving in Malta, Barron immediately visited the Astro Hotel where Mike had stayed. There, room 105, Mike's room, had already been cleared and cleaned by staff. All of Mike's belongings from the room were handed over to Barron, except for the GoPro case, which was missing. This suggested that Mike had taken the case with him, and that the camera was likely inside it, attached to his belt when his body was found. Recognizing the value of the footage, Barron understood that the videos could potentially reveal what truly happened to Mike, as he had filmed nearly everything. However, the day after the collection of the body and belongings, all police officers involved denied that any camera case had been attached to Mike's belt. They insisted that no such item had been cataloged or recovered. Barron found this hard to believe, especially since the lead investigator herself had mentioned seeing the case on Mike's waist. When he questioned her directly, she and the other officers again denied ever seeing or collecting the case. That same day, authorities declared that Mike had fallen from a cliff while riding his bike. Yet, the manner in which his body was found cast doubt on that explanation. If Mike had fallen simply while biking, he would have fallen straight down. Instead, his body was discovered in a position suggesting he had fallen backward, a highly unlikely scenario for a natural fall. Nonetheless, the police quickly dismissed these doubts, asserting that Mike's death was accidental, claiming he had fallen for more than 30 meters and then rolled to where his body was found. The coroner who examined Mike's body told Barron that he had broken his neck in 2 places during the fall, which would have caused nearly immediate death. However, at that time, no X-ray had been performed, raising questions about whether the coroner's assessment was based solely on visual inspection and physical examination, or if it was an inaccurate claim. The official autopsy report was only finalized after a month, confirming through DNA testing that the remains belonged to Mike Mansholtz. The report indicated that Mike had been dead for approximately 8 days when his body was discovered, implying he died on the same day he left the hotel to explore the island by bike. Strangely, the autopsy concluded that he had no broken bones, which was highly unusual. Had he fallen from a height exceeding 98 feet onto the rocks below, at least one arm would likely have been fractured. The discovery challenged the coroner's initial statement to Barron, who had claimed that Mike's neck was broken in 2 places and that he had not suffered pain. However, the autopsy revealed no broken bones, exposing the coroner's account as false. Forensic analysis of the rented bike further cast doubt on the official story, as its condition did not align with a fall from a height of nearly 100 feet. Just days before the autopsy report was officially released to Mike's family, a morgue employee responsible for handling his body approached Barron with unsettling observations. She described the situation as highly peculiar, emphasizing that Mike's lack of broken bones conflicted sharply with the police's assertion that he had fallen from the cliff while riding his bike. She advised Barron to consider his next steps carefully, as it appeared the police showed little interest in pursuing the case further. Seeking clarity, Barron confronted the lead investigator, the same person who had previously claimed to have seen the GoPro case but later denied any knowledge of it. This time she refused to answer his questions and avoided eye contact, fueling Barron's growing suspicion. His persistent inquiries about Mike's GoPro eventually led to a startling development. A few days later, Malta's forensic department handed him a digital camera, claiming it belonged to Mike. However, the camera was a basic early model Canon, far removed from the GoPro Hero 2 that Mike had used. Along with it, Barron received a damaged memory card, which the authorities insisted had been inside the camera when found beside the body. Barron immediately recognized that this was not his son's camera, suspecting the authorities had deliberately provided a fake in hopes of silencing his questions about the real device. By this point, Mike's family had become deeply suspicious of the Maltese police, perceiving their apparent disinterest as a cover-up. They wondered why the authorities seemed intent on hiding the truth. When Barron inquired about the missing belongings, some officers dismissively suggested that no Maltese would steal from a corpse, implying that perhaps a tourist had taken them instead. The police also claimed to have searched Mike's phone records but found nothing, no location data or call logs, adding to the growing sense of obstruction. Frustrated by the inconsistencies and the authorities' apparent lack of cooperation, Barron was on the verge of making serious accusations. Yet he had to return to Germany first to organize his son's funeral and handle other urgent matters. Mike's body arrived there on August 17th, 2016, and it was during the preparation for burial that new, disturbing details emerged. The funeral home staff noticed that Mike's body appeared unnaturally deflated, as if it were hollow or empty, deepening the mystery surrounding his death. The fact that Mike's body had not been embalmed or prepared for burial posed a significant obstacle as the investigation into his death was still ongoing. The Maltese authorities' failure to preserve the body meant that German investigators could not perform a proper second autopsy. Instead of the expected preservation chemicals, the body emitted a foul odor of decomposition. Recognizing this, the funeral home staff promptly informed the German authorities. A police officer later revealed that the agents responsible for handling Mike's coffin at the airport had noticed it felt unusually light. These suspicions prompted the body to be sent to the Medical University of Hanover for further examination. There, it was discovered that the body weighed only about 16 kilograms, and upon opening it, all of Mike's organs, brain, heart, lungs, liver, pancreas, adrenal glands, right kidney, bladder, prostate, stomach, intestines, and others had been removed. Only small remnants of the left kidney, diaphragm, spleen, and colon remained. This explained why Mike's body appeared deflated and weighed merely about 35 pounds. While organs are typically removed during an autopsy for investigation, they are usually replaced afterward, or the body is filled with materials like cotton or sawdust to maintain its shape. If organs are not returned, a report explaining the omission is required, which was not done in this case. Moreover, leaving a body in a vacuum-like state, as happened here, is highly unusual. Mike's family was devastated upon learning that almost all his organs were missing. His father, Barron, even wrote to Maltese authorities, begging them to send back his son's organs so he could bury them together. A Maltese coroner responded, claiming that animals had eaten Mike's organs before his body was discovered. This explanation was nonsensical, as the initial Maltese autopsy showed no injuries or bite marks consistent with animal activity. The local prosecutor's office in Oldenburg, where the family resided, decided to seize the body. What had begun as a missing person case turned into a potential criminal investigation. Consequently, German authorities launched an inquiry into Mike Manch's death. The forensic team at Hanover requested the Maltese autopsy report, but it was never provided. They noted that due to the absence of most organs, a second autopsy would yield limited, inconclusive results and could not replicate the findings of the first. Later, Mike's parents formally lodged a complaint against the Maltese authorities through their legal representatives. In their correspondence, they revealed that during an email exchange with the Maltese coroner responsible for the initial autopsy, he claimed that rodents had consumed Mike's organs and that his brain had liquefied. Frustrated and suspicious, Barron and Suzanne decided to pursue legal action, demanding a thorough investigation into the disappearance of their son's organs. The German public prosecutors took up the case, soon suspecting that Mike might have been murdered and criticizing the Maltese coroner's work as inadequate. They ordered a second autopsy, despite the body's altered condition, which compromised the accuracy of the findings. To ensure transparency, Maltese officials were required to be present during this procedure. The autopsy revealed no bite marks or signs of rodent activity, apart from a small bite on the neck and an abrasion on the forearm, effectively ruling out rodents as the cause of organ loss. It was reaffirmed that Mike's body was intact when recovered from the beach beneath the cliffs, showing no wounds or bites. However, the most critical discovery was that the body had not been embalmed in Malta, and due to advanced decomposition, it was impossible to determine the cause of death. The improper embalming process had obliterated any remaining evidence. The German investigators also concluded that there was no indication Mike had fallen from the cliffs from a height exceeding 30 meters. No major injuries, broken bones, ribs, or soft tissue damage were found, and his spine remained unbroken. Internal bleeding could neither be confirmed nor ruled out, but the absence of bruising or external trauma made significant internal hemorrhaging unlikely. Given the decomposition, the possibility of murder could not be entirely dismissed, but the evidence did not support a fall for more than 98 feet, especially considering the lack of fractures. Despite these findings, the Maltese authorities persisted in their narrative that Mike's death resulted from a tragic fall. The initial autopsy, conducted at the start of the investigation, involved 3 individuals, including Malta's chief forensic doctor, Professor Mario Seri, a highly esteemed expert recognized for his contributions to forensic medicine. He was present at the scene where the body was discovered and personally performed the first autopsy. When journalists from Barrington requested additional details, he refused to share any further information. His only reply to a single email from Barron was that the organs were already missing before the autopsy and had been eaten by rodents, while the brain had dissolved in the sun. He also claimed to have conveyed this explanation to Malta's lead investigator. The German forensic team, however, contradicted Dr. Mario Seri's report, explicitly stating in writing that no bite marks were found on Mike's body. Regarding the assertion that the brain had liquefied due to sun exposure, they dismissed it as absurd, pointing out that many countries, including Malta, often experience daytime temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius, yet no similar cases have been reported elsewhere. Officially, Dr. Seri documented that Mike's body was discovered lying on his back, but German authorities doubted he had died exactly where the body was found. They speculated that if he had fallen, he might have been alive upon hitting the beach and could have crawled to a shaded spot beneath the cliff. They also considered asphyxiation a possible cause of death, especially since Mike's hyoid bone was missing. In November of 2017, Barron returned to Malta in an attempt to speak with police and investigators involved in his son's case, but they refused to communicate. He then filed a legal request to access all case files, only to learn that the judge was ill and notoriously slow in issuing decisions. Eventually, a German diplomat in Malta helped him obtain the documents, but the official files were incomplete, missing crucial reports such as the autopsy results and photographs of the location where Mike was found. By January of 2018, mounting pressure from German authorities compelled the Maltese government to reopen the investigation. This victory allowed Germany to receive the initial case documents, reigniting media interest and prompting parliamentary debates. Yet, the new judge assigned to the case maintained that Mike had fallen from a cliff, resulting in no significant updates. Meanwhile, German investigators identified numerous inconsistencies but found themselves limited by the scant and poorly preserved evidence, leaving them unable to proceed further. Many analysts, ranging from journalists to experts, doubt the official verdict issued by Maltese authorities, given the numerous gaps in the careless handling of evidence by diplomats and investigators. Barron grew increasingly exhausted and disillusioned by the persistent negligence surrounding the case. Ultimately, he decided to cease his efforts to uncover the truth about Mike's death, choosing instead to focus on his family and their well-being. He is convinced that the true circumstances surrounding his son's disappearance will never be fully uncovered. A German newspaper, which had followed the case from the outset, attempted to revisit the story, but when reaching out to Maltese officials, they were met with silence and refused to comment. It appears that those involved in Mike Manschultz's case are unwilling to speak, as if deliberately concealing the truth. The case remains shrouded in mystery, with numerous theories circulating. One of the most prominent suggests that Mike may have fallen victim to organ trafficking. Given his robust health and the absence of all his vital organs, some believe he was targeted for organ theft. According to this theory, traffickers might have approached him while he was cycling through a secluded part of Malta, taken him to a hidden location, removed his organs, then stitched him up and discarded his body off a cliff, along with his bike, to simulate an accident. It's suspected that Maltese authorities might have uncovered evidence but chose to suppress it, as the country's economy heavily depends on tourism, and such a scandal could have disastrous consequences. Proponents of this theory point to a farmer living near the site where Mike's body was found, whose evasiveness when questioned by the victim's father seems suspicious, as if he was hiding something. Another popular hypothesis claims that Mike was robbed and then thrown off the cliff by thieves. Supporters of this idea argue that he was strangled and his body was deliberately placed at the scene. To conceal the crime and protect Malta's reputation, authorities allegedly removed the hyoid bone, the brain, and other organs from Mike's body. Since the hyoid bone's condition can reveal whether strangulation occurred, its absence suggests an attempt to hide evidence. The authorities' apparent desire to erase all traces supports this theory. There is also a less widely accepted notion that Mike might have fallen accidentally, and passers-by who discovered his body took the opportunity to steal his backpack, which contained several personal belongings. Lastly, a minority view suggests that Mike may have taken his own life. However, this theory was dismissed early in the investigation, as there were no signs indicating he was contemplating such an act. Evidence showed that Mike was happy, engaged in love, and exhibited no signs of depression or mental illness. The case of Mike Mansholt remains one of the most perplexing and incomplete mysteries ever documented. To this day, Maltese authorities maintain that Mike fell by accident, dismissing any alternative explanations as conspiracy theories. The environments in the game are meticulously designed, featuring a diverse cast of characters that enrich the experience. Players can join in-game clubs, allowing them to collaborate and play alongside family and friends. The setting and storyline are crafted to immerse players in the 1920s, capturing the essence of that era and giving the game a unique, nostalgic atmosphere. New chapters are released weekly, ensuring fresh content and continuous engagement, so boredom is never an issue. The gameplay challenges are specifically tailored to sharpen detective skills, promising hours of enjoyable and relaxing entertainment. I personally found the game highly enjoyable and tend to play whenever I have free time. It is available free of charge and can be downloaded using a QR code displayed on the screen or through a link provided in the pinned comment. The game is compatible with both smartphones and computers, making it accessible on various devices. Now, shifting to a real-life mystery, on the night between November 25th and 26th of 2022, Leslie Hurlbeek, age 22, and Kevin Trompat, age 21, mysteriously disappeared. The young couple was spending a few days at a friend's house in Prahok, a small community in France's Duke department, part of the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region. Prahok, known for its tranquil landscapes and friendly residents, is often chosen by those seeking a quieter lifestyle. Yet, this case cast a dark shadow over the peaceful town. As soon as the families lost contact with Leslie and Kevin, alarm bells rang, as such sudden disappearances were unlike them. Concerned, they promptly reported the couple missing to authorities. Investigations revealed that the couple had arrived in Prahok around 5:30 in the evening on November 25th. They were expected to stay overnight at the home of Nicholas Renault, a friend of Kevin's. Prior to that, they had left some belongings and Leslie's dog, Onyx, at the house of Tom Trullet, another mutual friend who had lent them the place. Tom was the one who introduced Leslie and Kevin at a party. Both Nicholas's and Tom's homes were located on the same street, just about 33 feet apart. After handing over the keys to Tom's house, Tom left for a nearby party in Laresh. Leslie and Kevin remained alone at Tom's place for a while, then decided to visit Nicholas's house, bringing Onyx with them. They spent several hours there and around 3 in the morning headed back to Tom's house, intending to spend the night. However, after leaving Nicholas's residence, the couple and their dog disappeared without leaving any trace. Nicholas Renault was the last person known to have seen Leslie and Kevin. During interviews with their families, authorities discovered that the couple had been together for only about 3 weeks. They resided in the French department of Quiron-Maritimes, which borders the Seas department, the area where they eventually went missing. Their families explained that Leslie and Kevin had planned to spend a few days in the small commune of Prahok, staying with friends. Leslie often brought her dog, Onyx, along when visiting nearby locations. She had cared for Onyx for nearly 3 years, and Kevin, who was fond of animals, had no objections to her bringing the pet. Kevin's family revealed that he loved nature and enjoyed hiking, a shared interest with Leslie. At the time, Kevin was unemployed, but had recently purchased a Mercedes Sprinter van, which he was renovating into a work vehicle. His childhood had been difficult. His father was arrested when he was very young, forcing him to learn self-reliance amid family hardships. In contrast, Leslie was described as outgoing and lively, with a passion for animals and social gatherings. She was quick to make friends and was often surrounded by people. She was very close to her twin brother, and her mother had passed away a few years earlier, a loss that deeply affected her. Leslie owned a business called LH Painting, specializing in residential and commercial painting. She chose to incorporate her initials into the company's name to create something she could be proud of, her own achievement. While the exact duration of her business was unclear, she had many clients. Before meeting Kevin, Leslie had been married for several years, but their relationship ended in separation in June of 2022. She met Kevin in October of that year, and they had planned a brief getaway for the last days of November, specifically the 25th, 26th, and 27th. According to Kevin's mother, the couple intended to spend only one day in Prague, where they later disappeared. Afterward, they planned to visit Bordeaux, a popular tourist city in France. Since Nicholas was the last person to see them, police considered him a person of interest, as he might hold clues to their disappearance. Kevin told authorities that the day before they vanished, Leslie had bought some clothes and they had planned to attend a party in the city. However, after leaving their friend Tom Truell's house, who had lent them his place, they decided to visit Nicholas. Leslie's dog, Onyx, was with them. Nicholas recalled that around 2:30 in the morning he suggested they spend the night at his house, but Leslie and Kevin declined, saying they would stay at Tom's nearby residence. A few minutes after leaving Nicholas's house with their dog, the couple headed toward Tom's residence. Although the distance was only about 33 feet, they never arrived. Authorities also questioned Tom Truell, who claimed he had been at a party and last saw the couple when he left his own home, handing them his keys. When Tom returned, he found Kevin and Leslie gone, along with their belongings, leaving only a jacket behind, which police collected as evidence. He insisted he knew nothing further. Investigators searched both Tom's and Nicholas's homes, employing luminol and other chemicals to detect blood traces, but found no evidence. Along with the couple's two friends living nearby, police interviewed other residents, who reported no unusual sights or sounds during the early hours of November 26th. Initially, some speculated that the couple might have vanished voluntarily, perhaps fleeing from someone or seeking adventure. However, the family strongly rejected this idea, asserting they would never abandon their lives or loved ones willingly. Further searches of Kevin and Leslie's residences revealed they had taken only minimal belongings, enough for a few days away. Leslie's white Peugeot partner van, used for her painting projects, was parked in town, ready for travel to other cities. A quick inspection of the vehicle uncovered nothing suspicious. Similarly, Kevin's Mercedes Sprinter van, which he was renovating, yielded no clues. These findings led French authorities to gradually dismiss the theory that the couple's disappearance was voluntary. Another hypothesis suggested they might have been struck by a vehicle and left in the woods, or that their bodies had been concealed by the driver responsible for an accident. Yet no skid marks, debris, or other signs of a collision appeared along the route they traveled that day. Typically, a hit and run leaves behind skid marks or vehicle fragments, but none were found. In the subsequent days, police expanded their search to the entire area surrounding the small town of Prague. Search dogs, forest teams, volunteers, including family and friends, and divers scoured the region's rivers and lakes. Despite exhaustive efforts, no trace of the couple or any evidence emerged from the extensive searches. During an interview with Kevin's stepmother, Karen Pratt, authorities learned that Kevin was carrying 10,000 euros when he vanished, along with his girlfriend and her dog. Karen explained she had personally delivered the money to Kevin while he was staying at a friend's house. She believed the funds were meant for purchasing a car belonging to someone Kevin knew. When she handed him the money, Karen noticed Kevin appeared tense, as if he was afraid. Concerned, she asked if something was wrong, and Kevin responded that he had seen men in a car following him. After this, Karen accompanied Kevin, Leslie, and the dog to Tom's house before returning to her own city. That was the last time she had contact with the young couple. The 10,000 euros Kevin had was a crucial piece of evidence for the police. Despite thorough searches of the homes of Nicholas and Tom, two friends of the couple, The money was nowhere to be found. This suggested that the motive behind Kevin and Leslie's disappearance might be connected to that sum. During the investigation, authorities also discovered that Leslie's phone emitted a signal 12 hours after she went missing. The signal was traced to New York City, about 8.7 miles from Prague. Law enforcement officials traveled there, conducted searches, and questioned residents, but no one reported seeing the couple. 3 days later, on November 29th, Kevin's phone also sent out a signal. Tracing it, police found it originated from the city of Forres, located in the Charente Maritime Department, over 80 kilometers from where the couple was last seen. Officers searched Forres and spoke with locals, but again, no sightings or clues emerged. As days passed, the case attracted widespread public interest, and news of Leslie, Kevin, and the dog's disappearance spread rapidly across France. Many theories surfaced, but none provided concrete leads. On December 7th, French authorities issued a public appeal during a nationwide broadcast, urging anyone with information about the missing couple and their dog to come forward. The following day, an employee at a recycling plant contacted police, reporting that he had found some of the couple's belongings in a bin. Among the items was Kevin's road safety certificate, which helped link the belongings to the missing pair. The recycling facility was located in Puira, a town in the Charente Maritime Department, over 56 miles from the last known location of the couple. Police quickly responded and visited the site to investigate further. Alongside Kevin's road safety certificate, authorities recovered various personal belongings belonging to the couple, including Lisey's clothing, her makeup case, and Leslie's painting supplies. These items were sent for forensic analysis, which confirmed they belonged to Kevin and Lisey. The families were granted access to the recovered possessions and verified their ownership. Concerning the shotgun shells, Kevin's relatives believed they likely belonged to him, as they resemble those he used for his fishing gun. The discovery of these belongings made it evident that the couple had not left voluntarily. It was illogical for them to abandon their personal items. All signs pointed to the involvement of one or more individuals in their disappearance, a prospect that deeply unsettled their families. On December 12th of 2022, authorities officially launched a kidnapping investigation. Despite ongoing search efforts, no trace of Kevin, Lisey, or their dog was found. The families, overwhelmed with grief, faced Christmas and New Year's without their loved ones, an unprecedented separation after years of being together during these holidays. In early January of the following year, renewed search operations took place. On January 2nd, a dog's body was discovered near the location where the couple had vanished. Its size and fur matched Onyx, Lisey's dog, but due to advanced decomposition, confirmation of its identity was impossible. This grim find heightened the family's despair, as the likelihood that the dog was Onyx suggested something terrible had happened to Kevin and Lisey. Leslie would never abandon her dog or harm him, making it probable that she and Kevin had met the same fate as the animal. On January 5th, over 100 volunteers participated in another search, organized by Corinne Pratt, Kevin's stepmother. She managed to rally the community through social media. A few days earlier, Corinne had consulted a fortune teller who advised focusing the search on Prague and nearby areas. The volunteers covered several miles, but no new clues emerged. On January 14th, another search was conducted, this time led by Guy, Kevin's father, and his family. Journalists present described the operation as chaotic, with poor coordination and many volunteers unsure of where to search. Once again, the effort yielded no results, leaving the mystery of Kevin, Lisey, and Onyx unresolved. Finally, on February 28th of 2023, French authorities detained Tom Trull, who was staying at his father's house at the time. Tom was a mutual friend of Leslie and Kevin, the one who introduced them and lent his home for the night they disappeared. According to police reports, Tom had been called multiple times to testify, yet his accounts remained inconsistent, raising suspicions and positioning him as the primary suspect in the disappearance of the couple. During the investigation, authorities uncovered that Tom had exchanged messages with Leslie shortly before she vanished. In a message time-stamped at 2:53 in the morning, Leslie told Tom she was feeling extremely ill after taking a synthetic drug he had provided. Additionally, geolocation data from Tom's phone placed him in Prague at the time the couple disappeared, information that directly contradicted his initial statements. In his first police interviews, Tom claimed that his last conversation with Leslie and Kevin occurred just before he left for a party in another town. He never mentioned the messages exchanged with Leslie just prior to her disappearance. He also insisted he had spent the entire night at the party, yet phone records showed he had arrived in Prague much earlier than he admitted. This evidence suggested that Tom was in Prague when Leslie, Kevin, and their dog were abducted, making it clear to investigators that he was lying. The suspicion was that his dishonesty stemmed from a hidden motive. Following his arrest, authorities delved into Tom's background to determine whether he was involved in the kidnapping and to uncover his possible motives. They discovered that Tom and Leslie had briefly dated in the past. People close to them revealed that Tom had never truly gotten over her and harbored lingering feelings. Leslie, however, had never taken their relationship seriously. Reports indicated that Tom became resentful when Leslie asked him to introduce her to Kevin, a meeting that eventually led to their relationship. For investigators, this suggested a potential motive for the abduction. Still, they believed there was more to uncover and continued their inquiries. There was also a possible financial motive, as Kevin carried $10,000 on him when he disappeared, a sum that was never recovered. On the 1st of March, police arrested a second suspect, 22-year-old Nathan Badgie, on Ray Island in the Cher Maritime region. Nathan was a friend of Tom Troll, and authorities suspected he played an active role in kidnapping Leslie, Kevin, and their dog. His house was located just under a quarter mile from where the couple's belongings had been abandoned in a trash container. The following day, March 2nd, police detained a third suspect, 23-year-old Enzo Cialati, also a friend of Tom Troll. After questioning each man separately, officers obtained crucial information about Leslie and Kevin's whereabouts. On March 3rd, Kevin Trump's body was discovered buried in a field near Porvoo, over 56 miles from Prague, where the couple and their dog had last been seen. The next day, Leslie Hurlbake's body was found buried in a forest in Versen, just 9 miles from where Kevin's remains were recovered. Both victims' remains were subjected to thorough examination, and DNA testing confirmed their identities as Kevin and Leslie, who had been missing for over 3 months. The medical examiner who conducted the autopsies reported that both victims suffered multiple injuries, including severe fractures and deep lacerations. These wounds were likely inflicted with iron bars, baseball bats, large knives, or possibly a machete. The examiner concluded that the couple had been beaten to death, with their deaths caused by both internal and external bleeding. Interestingly, Leslie was not a victim of sexual assault, a detail that the authorities had suspected during the investigation. As for Leslie's dog, Onyx, the suspects claimed they abandoned him on a road near Prague. However, law enforcement officials were skeptical of this account. If it were true, someone would have likely found and reported the dog by now. The case attracted significant media attention, with numerous photos of Leslie and Onyx circulating widely on television and social networks. Given the widespread awareness, many in France recognized Onyx if they encountered him. Authorities believed it was far more probable that the decomposed dog discovered on January 2nd was indeed Onyx, even if this could not be officially confirmed. The discovery of Leslie Hurlbeck and Kevin Trump's bodies deeply shocked their families and friends. Despite knowing that survival was unlikely, a faint hope persisted. The case received extensive media coverage in France, and those following the story felt profound grief. Kevin Trump's funeral took place on March 16th in the French town of New York, while Leslie Hurlbeck's funeral was held 2 days later in La Chelle. Both ceremonies were attended by loved ones marked by sorrow and outrage. On April 12th of 2023, police arrested 2 additional suspects believed to be involved in the crime. They were identified as 24-year-old Stephen Matthew and 22-year-old Miquel Elzadi. With these arrests, all 5 men faced formal charges of kidnapping, murder, and concealment of a corpse. Investigators pieced together the sequence of events leading up to the crime. They uncovered that after leaving Nicholas Renew's house around 3 o'clock in the morning, Kevin, Leslie, and Onyx headed to Tom Trill's residence, where they intended to spend the night. Notably, Nicholas Renew's and Tom Trill's homes are located on the same street, just a few meters apart. When they arrived at Tom's house, he was not there. Leslie then messaged him, saying she felt extremely unwell after using a synthetic drug he had provided. Contrary to his initial statements to police, Tom later claimed he was at a party in another city and only returned home hours later. The trio, Leslie, Kevin, and Tom, spent about half an hour together, drinking beer and using drugs. Nathan, Enzo, Stephen, and Michael arrived in a van and parked outside the house, waiting for Tom's signal to proceed. Each man was fully aware of his role, as Tom had meticulously planned every detail in advance. Shortly after, Tom sent a message, and the group stormed into the residence armed with hammers, iron bars, knives, and even a sword. Leslie and Kevin, caught completely off guard, had no chance to react, as everything unfolded in a matter of moments. Nathan struck Kevin multiple times with a hammer, while Tom quickly overpowered Leslie. The couple and their dog were then forced into the van and driven to a secluded location with their personal belongings confiscated. Although the suspects claimed they abandoned the dog roadside, authorities suspect it was also killed. Upon reaching the remote site, Tom allegedly continued the assault, striking Kevin several more times until he succumbed to his injuries. At this point, the suspects' accounts diverged. Tom insisted all 4 men participated in Kevin's murder, whereas Enzo, Stephen, and Michael claimed only Nathan and Tom were involved. Regardless, Kevin was brutally beaten to death. Following that, Nathan and Enzo stated that Tom used a sword to kill Leslie. With both victims dead, the 5 men traveled to a field in Choir Volta to bury Kevin's body, then to a forest in Versen, where Leslie was laid to rest. Some reports suggest the bodies were buried on the same day, while others indicate they were hidden near Prayak for 2 days before being moved to their final graves. In that version, the suspects returned to retrieve the bodies and transported them to the burial sites. Later that same day, the group returned to Prague. Tom stayed behind to clean the crime scene, while Nathan, Enzo, Stephen, and Michael split into 2 teams, one to clean the van and another to dispose of the victims' belongings. Police believe the motive was a combination of personal and financial grievances. Tom's resentment toward Leslie stemmed from feelings of rejection, and he also had a dispute with Kevin over money. Tom claimed Kevin was a drug dealer who owed him more than $30,000, and that Kevin's constant pressure to pay prompted him to decide to eliminate him and settle the debt. He also alleged that some of the other men owed Kevin money, though he couldn't specify amounts or identities. Regarding the $10,000 Kevin had on him, Tom said it was divided among the perpetrators, each using their share as they saw fit. Kevin's family, however, denied Tom's claim that Kevin was involved in drug dealing, insisting that the story was fabricated to tarnish the victim's reputation. Guy Trump, Kevin's father, was released from prison around the same time as the investigation into his son's and Leslie's murders was gaining momentum. In an effort to honor the victims, he organized a memorial march that attracted hundreds of mourners. During the event, he publicly lamented that the 5 men arrested had shattered both his family and Leslie's, expressing his despair over losing his son and his uncertainty about how to move forward. The grief overwhelmed Guy, leading him into a deep depression, reliance on medication, and a significant weight loss of about 26.5 pounds in a short span. On the 3rd of May, 2023, Grammett was taken into custody on charges of conspiring to have the 5 suspects killed while they were incarcerated. Reports indicated that Guy had allegedly offered $100,000 to anyone capable of eliminating the men behind bars. He denied these accusations, claiming that a friend had devised the plan to help him. In June of that year, Guy faced trial, received an 18-month prison sentence, and was barred from owning firearms for 5 years. However, his conviction was later overturned, and he remains at liberty. Meanwhile, Marita Reese Garcia, a 77-year-old woman and Kevin's aunt, was also detained after making threatening social media posts directed at the accused. She warned the police better catch the suspects before she did, promising to bring their body parts in a suitcase if she found them first. Her threats were not the sole reason for her arrest. Authorities also linked her to an organized gang of thieves active during the 80s and 90s, responsible for numerous crimes, including robbery, kidnapping, and murder. Notably, she was considered a prime suspect in the Odna Tisiacha Deviatsot Devianostopiat murder of Karen Dio, whose dismembered body was discovered inside a suitcase, mirroring her threatening words. After several days in custody, she was released following a judge's hearing. On the 18th of March 2025, Nathan Badgie was freed after his defense successfully argued that a procedural mistake had occurred. An email containing the date of a hearing about renewing his detention had been mistakenly sent to the wrong address, and his lawyer was unaware of the scheduled session. Because of this, the court ruled that Nathan's detention was unlawful, leading to his release. The families of Kevin and Leslie reacted with outrage, deeming the decision absurd. Despite his release, Nathan must adhere to court-imposed restrictions, including remaining within his city limits as he awaits trial. Meanwhile, Tom, Enzo, Stephen, and Michael remain in custody, with their trials expected later this year. Under French law, individuals convicted of certain serious offenses may be sentenced to life imprisonment. However, this does not necessarily mean they will remain incarcerated indefinitely, as parole can be granted after serving a minimum of 30 years.